A group of people dressed in robes stood in a circle, shouting phrases in an incomprehensible language. They seemed to worship the huge glowing crystal that stood in the center of their circle. Suddenly, the Lord of the Sword, Ray Chan, burst into the thick of things, leading a crowd of warriors behind him. Following him, riding on the skeleton of a fantasy creature, came the Guardian of the Graves, Georg Bill Meyer. And St. Mary Jaeger, clad in light armor, shouted, "They must stop the ritual!" But it was too late. The tower level changed from 12th to 12th plus. The crystal that had previously been the center of the ritual was transformed into several smaller crystals, lined up one above the other. A new character landed on the ground, scattering warriors around. Season 5 has begun, which means a new seasonal boss, the Plague Lord, is coming. His green skin is studded with metal inserts, and his breathing prosthesis is covered by a red cape collar. The raid's new goal is to defeat the Plague Lord, and all players rush into battle, meeting resistance in the form of bright rays of magic. Green tentacles pierce the warriors, striking each one. During this bloodthirsty battle, many warriors died. Their bodies fell lifelessly onto the cold stone. St. Maria Jaeger cut her way with the sharp edge of her sword, mercilessly slicing through the magical tentacles. In the crowd, the guild leader, Lord Sword, questioned whether the game was worth the bloodshed. He screamed that he didn't want to die and began to retreat back in horror, causing a storm of indignation among his brothers. This angered the Plague Lord greatly, and he croaked, "Stupid mortal." And after that, he swung his sword. "Where are you trying to run?" his roar was heard. Before the green beam from the sword had time to touch the running warrior, it was met with a similar blue beam in response. Shouts of delight went up from the crowd. "It's him! We're saved!" The Hero King appeared on the battlefield, his unwavering gaze fixed on the enemy. And without a second's hesitation, he rushed into battle. The enemies found themselves in a fierce clash. Their bodies intertwined in a dance of death. Green and blue rays sparkled around them. The boss's anger blinded the nearby army. The warriors shouted the name of their hero, worrying about his life. "How dare you attack me alone? Foolish king, the hope of humanity, you will die alone, drowning in an ocean of plague where no one will find you," the enemy said fiercely. To this, the king only thanked him calmly. He could not allow others to see his strength. With a calm smile, he finished, "Now you don't have to worry about that." The boss, shocked by the impact force, shouted in disbelief that this couldn't be happening. A beam of blue flames shot into the sky, killing the enemy. The crowd, amazed by such power, breathed a sigh of relief. They won. And the Hero King, in turn, continued to hold in his hands a small clot of blue light. All players were given rewards depending on their contribution to the battle, and the main player, Kang Yu-sung, was given a reward in the form of Black Death equipment and a title. Once again, our world has gained an extra year of life. At this time, at the meeting, Kang Yu-sung was praised for placing first 4 seasons in a row. A hero among heroes. The Hero King, Kang Yu-sung. He sat motionless and looked indifferently at the people present in front of him. Children around the world joyfully greeted his figure on television screens. Traders were selling t-shirts in his honor because he saved us all again. The speaker invited the hero to say a few words to the audience on how to introduce all the warriors gathered there today. "Yu-sung, just say something nice, even if you don't want to," the blonde sitting next to the king whispered. This blonde was St. Mary Jaeger. She was pitifully asking to say at least a word because they were shown on TV. The entire main team of warriors was present at the interview at the UN Geneva Forum. The top 10 players of the season were asked to tell stories of how they heroically risked their lives and made history by saving the world. The Hero King took the microphone in his hands. He asked mockingly, "Heroically?" The guy shocked everyone with his next phrase. He was trying for money. Maria Jaeger looked at him in shock. "I haven't been interested in anything other than them for a long time now." Yu-sung continued his sensational answer. Season 1, The End of the World Preview. The world has become a game. Towers of various sizes began to appear everywhere, darkening the sky. After some time, monsters began to emerge from them, killing everything in their path. Everyone was waiting for the end of the world to come. But suddenly, rays of light appeared, saving everyone. These are the players who came out onto the battlefield. They hunted monsters, smashing them with swords, and thus they protected people, risking their lives. After this, the world began to live by new rules. Tower invasion is a phenomenon where hordes of monsters emerge from towers. Players with supernatural powers began to prevent this by raiding towers at certain times. After all this, Kang Yu-sung sat in front of the computer that was turned on. "What comments? Is it okay to express yourself like that on a forum?" he muttered under his breath. The country's community of players formed spontaneously as the world gradually turned into a game, and it was called the Players' Forum. Here, players share information about raids and can trade items. In correspondence, Kang Yu-sung snapped at his readers after learning that he was being boycotted. Fans began asking personal questions after learning the identity of the interlocutor. Reporters promised to wait at the house on the opening day of the season. The Hero King looked out of the window, throwing the curtains wide open in front of him. Below his house, he saw a crowd of journalists and fans, all of them taking pictures of his window. The guy went outside, and immediately after that, he was bombarded with questions about merch, his interview, and the new season. "You said you were only interested in money. Will that same motivation remain in the new season?" They interrogated him with microphones. As he passed by reporters, Kang Yu-sung mockingly asked, "What can drunken TV stars offer you? And I will repay you with good entertainment." He extended his hand in an offering gesture. The interviewers froze in bewilderment, their faces frozen in shock and incomprehension. Suddenly, the asphalt beneath them began to crumble, as if a strong earthquake had struck. Season 6, The Endless Maze. People with cameras were frozen with fear, some were taking pictures, and some were just blinking stupidly. Towers were created, and players could enter the existing ones after reading the information on the gates underneath them. In the sky, you could see towers rising above the clouds. While the crowd was distracted by this incident, the Hero King, with a smirk on his face, began to move in the other direction. Flyers advertising merchandise from the Hero King scattered across the floor. The guy walked on, surprised that there weren't even any rats left in the area. It's always quiet on the first day of the season. Most of the rulers were happy to see the clown ruler performer. They laughed heartily, giving various blessings. Kang Yu-sung sarcastically asked them to keep laughing. He did everything for a reason. Everything for the sake of rewards from the enlightened ones who call themselves rulers. They gave him a new blessing. Whoever chooses Legends Effect, for 3 rounds his luck will be significantly increased, and in 1 round he will definitely receive a legendary reward. Titles and rewards are retained after the end of the season, unlike abilities and items. Kang Yu-sung asked to open his reward. A yellow glowing card appeared in his hand. The blessing greatly affects the player of the gacha game. Kang Yu-sung repeated with delight, "Legendary? Legendary?" A legendary item appeared in front of him. A black coat with gold trim. And now, with a legendary level of defense, ability, and artifact, it was possible to enter the tower. The guy seemed to vanish from his spot, and the ruler withdrew his blessing and blessed his t-shirt business. As if from nowhere, the Hero King appeared in the middle of the columns in the tower. Orcs appeared there. They leaned sullenly over the guy, promising to kill him. It was time to try out the new heroic level abilities. Kang Yu-sung activated the ice sword that appeared in his hands at the same second. After this, the guy rushed into battle, not forgetting to thank the ruler for the new effect. He scattered the orcs around him with a shockwave. They couldn't do anything against him. Having turned into ice, their bodies flew away from the hero in different directions, and he remained standing in the center, unwavering on his feet. A mocking smile lit up his face as his palms wiped the blade from non-existent blood. The player's level has improved in many ways, and he just continued on his way. The smile never left his smug face. A good start! Holding the ice sword in one hand, the Hero King entered a new floor, and therefore the next level. The guy looked at the picture that appeared before his eyes with disdain. Below, a crowd of orcs was warming themselves by the fire. They were spinning barrels in their hands and angrily talking about something. A couple of them finally noticed the warrior who had entered. "The warrior has come! He is the one who will send us to Valhalla!" The monsters shouted enthusiastically, raising their swords above themselves. Kang Yu-sung just smiled, clutching his ice sword tighter in his hand. "I'll show you what heaven looks like!" he shouted as he rushed into battle. The king passed the floor and was now on the 4th. While it was good that his level was rising, The guy still found it difficult to fight without taking a break. The guards blocked the way to their commander's quarters. These orcs were dressed in shiny armor, a good way to show who was the elite here. The player received a notification. The Iron Ruler has blessed the guards. The latter, in turn, saluted the ruler and rejoiced at this outcome of events. "Where is the warrior who will send us to Valhalla?" the crowd shouted as they rushed into battle. The Hero King just calmly looked at the monsters that were running towards him. He swung his sword and thought that he would probably not be given a break today. The guy easily pushed back the attacking squad, using the blessing bestowed upon him. But surprisingly, he met with a good rebuff. The orc commander slammed his weapon on the floor, and the shockwave even sent the player flying into the air. Kang Yu-sung rushed at his opponent with fury again. The blue blade's impact with the metal armor did almost no damage. A thought flashed through the boy's mind. Elite warriors have resistance to ice chi energy. Dodging another attempt by the orc to harm him, Kang Yu-sung jumped up, thereby tricking the monster into hitting his fellow. Amid the indignation of his opponents, he thought out loud about the need to deliver a precise, fatal blow. But how could he do this if he didn't have the appropriate ability? A memory flashed back to the moment when the player received an artifact, ability, and legendary item. He opened his inventory, taking out the Ice Heart artifact, which gave a boost to damage and all ice effects. Kang Yu-sung had never encountered anything like this before, and he wasn't sure if he could handle such a powerful item now. The opponents shouted, calling for battle, impatiently urging them to fight. One of them quickly threw his axe in an attempt to kill the player. Now was not the time for doubts. The hero implanted the artifact, bringing it to his heart. The item was successfully implanted, and a powerful cold magic energy was felt. All effects of equipped ice attribute ability cards have been increased. Kang Yu-sung was filled with magic, and all his fatigue seemed to be lifted by hand. The war-hungry monsters, ignoring the changes in the player, continued to rush at him in rage. The Hero King, in new equipment this time, responded to the attack. He easily pierced his opponent with a blade. The same one, struck by such force, fell lifelessly on his back. Half of his body turned into ice. The player's level increased, and his body glowed with blue flame. The blade became larger, making it easier to fight off attackers. Green blood flowed like rivers, and the blows of the blue blade were delivered with enormous speed. One by one, the orcs fell dead, entering the much-desired Valhalla. After defeating another enemy, the player's level increased again. Again and again, the level increased at a furious speed, and the light of ice magic sparkled here and there. Lines of magic cut through the air, creating an intricate web of interweaving. Kang Yu-sung exhaled, thinking that he had completely cleared this floor, but behind him the last surviving orc was visible. The system was silent, which is why he realized that someone else was still there. The final blow, the sword turned into a mace, and the player's eyes sparkled with inhuman passion. With this, he finished clearing the floor. The level increased again. A special reward was received, a set of random ability cards. The hero commanded to open it. A light blue card with a white question mark in the middle appeared in front of him. It was a normal ability card, which unpleasantly surprised and upset the king. Still, a regular card was better than nothing, so he equipped it as he moved on. The guy has once again reached a new level. Walking into a room with high ceilings, he heard a greeting and praise for being still alive. After all, while he is alive, he can sell a ton of items, so it is more profitable not to die. So many achievement points! Don't forget to spend them with me before you die! The owner of the automated store looked at the hero from under her eyelashes. The girl offered him to buy a set of cards from her, to which the player only joked, saying that he didn't trust her. Instead, he only took 2 potions, one for speed and one for fire. For this, 300 achievement points were taken from him. As the player walked away, the saleswoman behind him continued to beg, "Come on, buy it, just one set." The guy walked onto the boss's floor. He was sitting on a throne on top of a tall staircase. "Fight with honor and die!" The boss towered over the hero, who in turn protected himself from the shockwave with an ice shield. Encouraged by the fact that he finally had a worthy opponent in front of him, Kang Yu-sung smiled. He tossed the newly acquired potion, launching it towards the huge orc. The bubble shattered on the enemy's body, creating flashes of fire behind it. The boss was furious and confused by this. Cutting the air and flames around him with his hands, he growled furiously. The player, taking advantage of the orc's hesitation, jumped on him from behind. Tearing the air with his magic, he swung the huge blade of his sword, and he simply pierced the monster's body, burning a huge hole in his chest. And he landed on the floor next to it. With a blessing, even a normal level ability becomes very useful. But suddenly the boss behind the player croaked, "This is not the end yet!" The monster activated Berserker mode, its eyes glowing aggressively. Kang Yusung smiled. If the game was too easy, he would have gotten bored long ago. The enemy growled in anger, his rage creating a huge wave of magic around him. The player challenged, "I'm sure your blow will finish me off, but only if you can hit it." The orc leaned over him, his eyes glowing red. The hero protected himself from the blow with an ice shield. They began to fight, splashes of red and blue visible between the bodies. Kang Yusung swung his sword while counting, 175, 174. He deftly dodged the blows of someone else's axe, continuing to pronounce the names of the numbers. Due to its bulkiness, the boss seemed to be trying to hit the fast player at random, constantly missing. The king used the second potion. Time ran out when he counted to 0. Immediately after this, the huge body of a green orc fell next to the guy. A bunch of signs appeared in front of the player. He managed to capture the tower, receive a reward and a title. He got a set of cards that could give him a regular card or a high-level card with the chosen attribute. The guy himself didn't believe it. It was too good to be true. This was the best reward that could be obtained in the 3rd-level tower. He opened a set with the ice attribute. A common card called Ice Arrows dropped. Kang Yusung muttered indignantly, "This damn game. It always fools me." Tower of the Demon Worshippers. Level 3. Allowed number of players from 1 to 16. A player with an ice sword entered the tower and was immediately attacked by a bunch of monsters with long purple tails. He gathered strength into his fist, and icy stripes sparkled between his fingers. These stripes later turned into ice arrows, which their king launched into the horde of monsters. "How I love leveling up my abilities!" Kang Yusung shouted, scattering small creatures to the sides. The second wave was about to begin. Another squad was visible behind the dark-haired boy. The purple demons with strange blades in their hands were getting closer and closer. The player exhaled, thus catching his breath. And having gathered his strength, he rushed into a new battle. His ice magic froze his opponents. While the monsters were dying, his ability levels were increasing one after another. The room was illuminated by the purple light of magic. The boss of the tower, the cult of the demon, appeared. He sent his minions forward, not knowing that he was sending them to certain death. Kang Yusung used his freezing ability and cast the effect on the boss. It's good that he came here. Now he could study all his new abilities. The guy pulled out one card, deciding to start with it. He wanted to know the maximum amount by which this card could increase his ammo count. Ice spears appeared around the player. He took one, waving it around. Having thoroughly tested the weapon, he swung, and after that he hit the main opponent in the shoulder, breaking both him and the weapon. The rest followed the first spear, each one digging into the flesh, spilling blood. A huge explosion erupted from the end of the spear, landing on the monster's body. The guy once again defeated the boss and cleared the tower, for which he received a card. He was thinking that he didn't feel any difference if the ice sword was broken into pieces, but only if there were no more than 8 of them. Suddenly, something distracted his attention. One of the tower factions took a great interest in him. A quest appeared. Meet your shadow. Meet the Shadow Council. Mysterious characters in plague masks and black robes appear before the player. They surrounded Kang Yusung. "We remember you, mortal." One extended his hand, again inviting him to join them. In the 5th season, the hero was already with them. This is not a bad option. He would like to make a deal with them right now, but there are more than 2 factions here that could fight them. From the plague mask came the answer, "We will shelter you. Have you forgotten how strong we are?" "No, that's why I want to negotiate with you," Kang Yusung calmly assured them. He asked the Shadow Beast faction, and also a rare card of the ability of darkness. This request surprised his audience. As soon as the faction started to refuse him, the guy interrupted them, calmly agreeing, "Oh well, "You still suck." As soon as the player started to walk away in the other direction, he was stopped, causing a sly smile to appear on his face. A cute shadow creature appeared behind Kang Yu-sung, a black cat with purple eyes. Along with obtaining the shadow beast, there was also a special achievement. Meow! The player knelt down in front of the animal, praising it and scratching it behind the ear. With all this, he was given a rare Shadow Blade card. And the faction representative asked again if the player was satisfied. He took the card in his hands, smiling warmly. More than pleased. And only after this did Kang Yu-sung agree to join the Shadow Council faction. His relationship with them improved. The guy came out of the tower and had a strong feeling that this season was going to be good. He was wondering whether to maintain the progress he had made now or to move further in the same direction. Someone called the guy's name, causing him to turn around abruptly. Kang Yu-sung let out a dissatisfied sigh. Here we go again. The paparazzi all started bombarding the hero with questions about the towers and his successes. "I'm just a capable and incredible player, right?" he asked, shielding his eyes from the flashes. The group continued to point microphones at the celebrity. This season, players are participating in raids more actively. A player from China entered the 4th-tier tower. Kang Yu-sung asked how many people were with him, and in response he heard the number 5. However, 4 of them had already died, and the player was left alone. Kang Yu-sung crossed his arms indignantly. He believed that the ability was using people as human shields. Just now, the Sword Lord from China entered the 5th-level tower, and when asked about the number of people this time, the answer was heard, "He's alone!" The hero casually said that the player was too energetic for the first day, because there was no point in competing in speed at the beginning. Everyone knows that the Saint first collects abilities and items. The Gravekeeper has no plans to participate in the game yet. Kang Yu-sung was in deep thought. Apparently, the Sword Lord in the 4th-level tower had obtained a good item. Journalists have once again pounced on him with questions about what Kang Yu-sung thinks about this matter. The guy waved his finger at his temple and only quietly replied, "Idiot." "Kang Yu-sung, aren't you going to compete with him?" The answer was simple. "You all already know that I'm an idiot too. If I had to choose between being a loser and a winning idiot, I'd rather be the latter, right?" The boy smiled. Looking up at the towers, he offered to take his interviewers to one on the 5th level. The hero entered the building, stepping on yellow pentagrams. Only one could gain the glory of the winner. People started betting on who would win. It would be a fight for self-esteem. There was clearly a sword lord inside the tower. It was time to play for real. The evil empire of Kabbalis started the war, and arrived in the kingdom of Lodea, having increased its military power in advance. There was a battle to be fought, capturing or defending the fortress. Kang Yu-sung had a choice of who he was playing for, the kingdom or the empire. The Chinese communist fought for the empire and therefore had no choice. He had to join the kingdom of Lodea. Although the player would have chosen the kingdom's side anyway, the game rewards those who are at a disadvantage more. The hero king was moved to the palace fortress. Knights in armor looked at him with fear. They were happy to see the player because now he would help them. The knights enthusiastically blessed God. After all, now they were saved. The hero was there to help them. Judging by their equipment, the fighters were already ready to fight. But now they were sitting at the table, as if developing battle tactics. The player asked again if he could sit down, and immediately started asking questions about who was in charge. The allies looked down, lowered their noses, and silently lowered their heads. The commander entered the room. "Wow, how careless our guest is." The short, plump man took a minute to introduce himself, and then asked his guest to adhere to court customs. "Listen, Commander, do you want to win the battle?" the hero asked again. He in turn agreed. Although they lacked military power, they had strength of spirit. After all, their young fighters will never lose. Kang Yu-sung looked at the man in surprise and indignation. The player shamelessly kicked him in the chest, sending him flying back a couple of meters. Having knocked him to the floor, the guy muttered through his teeth, "Now I'll be in charge here." The knights were only happy about this development of events, but Kang Yu-sung immediately got down to business, asking about the squads, classes, and so on. He went out into the street, to the fortress, thinking about the words about 5,000 peasants, of whom 900 knew how to use a bow. Compared to the empire, the difference in military power was striking. It was good that there was no magic in this world. Besides, the Sword Lord did not possess firepower. He was the heir of the Iron Ruler. Most players can only sign a contract with one ruler and receive rewards from only one of them. Kang Yu-sung was a different case. The Clown Ruler made him a solo player, and therefore he was rewarded by different rulers. On the other hand, a ruler can take several players under his wing, but only one will become the heir with special benefits. The rulers do not stop supporting their favorites, but there are also prohibitions. The Lord of the Sword was not allowed to use the abilities from the Iron Ruler as the main ones. Therefore, they still had a chance to win. It is unknown how real the worlds in the towers are, but the fighters clearly felt the pressure. Whether they were real people or just creations of the tower, there was no way to know for sure. But whoever they were, only one thing was important now: how to raise their fighting spirit. The fighters blared their horns. "A guest has arrived in our kingdom," they announced to their fellow soldiers. "We have a new commander. Orders are now taken from the player." The army was delighted. They clearly despised their former commander. Kang Yu-sung was glad to hear that the soldiers' spirits were lifted when he kicked the head of the house out of his post. But suddenly the empire began its offensive. The kingdom's archers were forced to quickly retreat to their posts and begin firing at the enemy. The imperial army approached the fortress gates. If the player deals with it, the enemy's morale will weaken. "Shadow Beast, you need a shorter name. How about a dark one?" the guy asked the animal. A huge cat emerged from the shadows in front of him. It growled menacingly, and the player raised his sword threateningly. The enemy army began to look around in bewilderment. Some panicked and spoke of something big and dark, while others tried to reason with them, talking about duty. But something distracted their attention and imprinted horror on their faces. The Shadow Beast seemed to jump out of nowhere at the soldiers, piercing them with dark spikes. In panic, the soldiers rushed to escape from the terrible monster. But an icy force came to the aid of the monster. A dozen soldiers froze to death. Kang Yu-sung, looking at this, only wished his dark friend a good appetite. The beast opened its mouth, advancing on the frightened army, and immediately slammed it shut, devouring the frozen knights. The duel was fought in complete cold. The kingdom proudly fought against the empire. The commander of the defending side cut down the enemies with an ice sword. When the player shows up, it's unknown how it might end. But there are no traces of the Sword Lord's presence here. On the one hand, the player's presence increases the morale of allies. On the other hand, it reveals his location to the enemy. However, no one risks their lives. Players cannot kill each other, unlike towers. According to the rules, the loser is thrown out of the tower and fails the raid. Kang Yu-sung wasn't going to die in this tower, but that didn't mean he could lose. The Shadow Beast continued to devour the warriors as they froze and tried to escape. The warriors fell dead to the floor, their bloody swords stuck in the ground. Kang Yu-sung addressed the Sword Lord, even though he couldn't hear him. "It's about time you showed up." Swords rose into the air, rising above the lifeless bodies. The kingdom's warriors stared in shock at the spectacle. The weapon flew towards the wall. It was a sword control technique. "I wondered when he managed to get the card with her." Kang Yu-sung noted with an admiring smile that the Sword Lord was very lucky. He jumped off the wall, leaping from stone to stone, an icy blade in his hands. "You prepared well while you were hiding, but alas, I didn't waste my time either." The grin never left the player's face. The Hero King dodged the flying swords, a shadow cat growling behind him. They rushed into battle together, hand in hand. They began the battle together. The Sword Lord was late. His opponent had already finished leveling up. Soldiers in the crowd shouted, "The Empire now has a player on its side! A guest is fighting for us!" As it turned out, the army followed its leader, Kang Yu-sung. This made him very happy. The course of the battle changed dramatically. "But you didn't expect to break me with this," the player addressed the second. "The accuracy of the sword control technique is inversely proportional to the number of swords, so it would not work on an ally of the kingdom." The boy used his ice magic as the swords around him swirled in a tango. Noticing something, he looked around in fear, but then the fear turned into a satisfied grin. The Seraphim's shield repelled the enemy's attack. The fragments flew at the Sword Lord, who frantically covered his face from possible injuries. The boy leaned on his sword to keep his balance. He stood in front of Kang Yu-sung. The latter in turn spoke up. "You didn't really expect to capture the fortress with only this equipment." The answer was followed by a counter question. How do you think we can win this tower? After all, even if you kill everyone from the kingdom, the empire will not win until the player defeats the second. And even knowing all this, the Sword Lord chose the side of the empire to defeat the hero king. The player is a hero, and the hero's calling is to protect the world. And the bastard who is unable to understand this, he has no right to be called a hero. In response to the Sword Lord, Kang Yu-sung said, "The thing is, the world you protect is not just made up of your country's guild members." The Sword Lord looked down at his opponent with a sullen gaze, and with angry cries he rushed into battle, attacking the player from the kingdom. The ice shield repelled the first attack, protecting the hero from damage. The fragments flew in all directions, and the Chinese continued to briskly rush into the duel. Kang Yu-sung used a tactic with ice spikes that flew at the enemy's face and body, distracting and hindering easy movement. "Stop using dirty tricks!" The Sword Lord rushed into battle with shouts. Behind him, he heard a deep roar, and after this roar, a huge shadow animal appeared. Since their fight was being watched by the rulers, they must have understood the weight of defeat. Kang Yu-sung rushed at his opponent with a scream, surprising him. "How vile! You conjured me up just to hit me in my weak spot!" The Sword Lord fumed. Kang Yu-sung's next move surprised the enemy no end. The guy jumped off the wall where they were fighting into the thick of things, among the ordinary soldiers. With sparkling eyes, Kang Yu-sung ran into battle, cutting through the air with his cloak. Enemy soldiers, upon seeing the player, began to run away in panic, screaming for help as they ran in all directions. The Sword Lord, in turn, rushed there in an attempt to catch up with the Ice Warrior. The Chinese man loudly pleaded with the player to stop in an unsuccessful attempt to catch up. In the Imperial Army barracks, the soldiers were indignant. How could they stop this monster? Where was their player? The Duke of Barmouth pounded the table with screams. His nerves couldn't withstand such stress. Kang Yu-sung entered the building. He was looking for this place, and now, pleased with himself, he greeted his enemies. He swung his sword. "There is another way to complete the tower's task. It's a player! The God of Truth has turned his back on us!" The soldiers looked at Kang Yu-sung in panic. They needed to protect his lordship because the player with the ice sword was already ready to deal with the nobleman. The blade passed through the warriors, splashing blood like paint on the walls. The hero calmly continued to stand in place, trying to catch his breath after running. Everything around suddenly turned black and white, which meant that one of the players had won. At that moment, the Sword Lord ran up behind Kang Yu-sung, calling him not the most pleasant words. "You should have dressed the officers and hidden them among the soldiers." The player smugly noted someone else's mistake. "You see, I simply had to take away the Empire's advantage from you." The Chinese man looked ahead with disappointment. He, in the expected aggression, rushed at the coastal dweller of the kingdom with shouts. And just as his sword was a millimeter away from someone else's neck, a message appeared that the Battle of Palace was over. The Sword Lord's weapon disappeared right from his hands, turning into dust. Signs appeared in front of the players, one with an inscription about victory, and the second about defeat. As a reward for winning, the player could choose one of 3 ability cards of his opponent. Kang Yu-sung mocked the Chinese man, saying that it was nice to give him some choice. The Korean chose a heroic ability, to which the Sword Lord only became angry, talking about revenge. The first one received metal synergy, and all of his metal attribute ability effects were increased. Kang Yu-sung opened his eyes in alarm on his bed. The bed was shaking from the vibration of the phone that was receiving a call. Someone was knocking loudly on the front door, as if trying to knock it down. Kang Yu-sung wondered why he was having restless dreams, and why someone was knocking on his door so early. The guy finally opened the front door, asking the man behind it what brought him to the monastery. Park Tae-shik, known as Mr. Park, joked with a smile about the player acting like a big shot. After signing a contract with the assassin ruler, the man gained special skills and achievements. He became known by his game nickname, Sword Smasher, and was ranked among the top 30 players. Moreover, he is now the head of the National Intelligence Department of the Blue House. Kang Yu-sung met this old man before the world became a game. Then, when the guy was 15, he played in a computer club. People around were surprised that the guy was good at any game. Park Tae-shik was the owner of the computer cafe where all this took place. The elder suggested that Yu-sung become a professional player. The boy used to play for fun, but the old man persuaded his parents, and he trained him, while simultaneously analyzing the abilities of the younger one. On the day Kang Yu-sung turned 18, he officially debuted as a professional player. In its very first season, there was an invasion from the tower, and the world turned into a game. The boy was lost, bloodied, and afraid. He looked at the monster that was approaching him. The monster was centimeters away from the player, trying to grab him with its huge paws. And from certain death, salvation came from Mr. Pak, who jumped on the creature with a weapon. The older man had just turned to ask how he was feeling when the boy rushed forward, shouting, "Mom!" That day, Kang Yu-sung lost both his parents and became an orphan. Tears appeared in her blue eyes and streamed down her cheeks and onto the floor. He lost his parents, but found his only hero. They were sitting together at the table having breakfast. Kang Yu-sung asked a reasonable question. "What's the matter with you?" The elder narrowed his eyes, continued eating noodles, and calmly replied, "I came today because of the association." The hero king choked in surprise. The guy exhaled. "What's the matter? They still want to use me for their own purposes?" The Korean Players Association, KPA, is a national player association and the only all-powerful player management guild in the country. The elder asked again if Yuson knew about the new academy that KAI built in the new season. He agreed, saying that it was a slave factory. In a week, the first final exam was to take place there, and the Hero King was invited to attend. The Elder One assumed that he wouldn't go and already said that he could turn them down and there was nothing to worry about. But the player agreed to go, which made his mentor very happy. It would be good to see new players who will take on the burden of caring for the country's future. But there was a condition: to move the exam time to 5 in the morning tomorrow. At exactly 4:55 the next day, the students were training, fighting a hologram of a monster. They turned their attention to the Hero King, who was their judge, reasoned that everyone would graduate anyway, and were indignant about the time of the exam. Kang Yu-sung silently watched the other person's fight, leaning against the wall behind him. The head of KAI approached him, asking for his opinion since their students systematically studied the program. Lee Seon-ho, the director, asked to evaluate the pride of their academy, the first generation of students. Kang Yu-sung reminded them of his condition as he was testing their strength. And it is for this reason that the final word on the release was also his. The boys started the exam while the director was thinking that he was doing whatever he wanted. But this won't interfere with the perfect plan. It's only the beginning of the season. The students have stuck to their schedule, and even the Hero King won't be able to ruin it. After a while, Lee Seon-ho stood in shock, because how was this possible? Kang Yu-sung eliminated the players one by one and ordered everyone to leave. His ice weapon flew through the air and easily killed the future of each student. There was only one girl left. She asked with tears in her eyes if she had failed, but the king player only briefly replied with a refusal. She passed, because she was lucky. The girl was the luckiest one since she lasted until the end, and for a player, luck is everything. "I'm done. Turn on the camera." The guy crossed his arms over his chest. "Congratulations on your graduation." The director burst into the room with people behind him. "What does this mean, Kang Yu-sung?" They started to get indignant when the boy interrupted them. "Did you think I wouldn't understand? Your students are either the children of executive directors or are somehow related to them, right? You invited me to assess their progress to gather information. You want to recruit these idiots? Why give them positions they don't deserve, so you can use them for your own purposes? Have you been doing this since the first year? How rotten have you all become?" These words made the director of the academy very angry. He became furious at such a thing. He started talking about how a player is just a weapon in the hands of the country, that nowhere in the world are they, the players, treated differently, and the rulers only do everything necessary for the well-being of the country. Nowadays, they only need war heroes and nothing more. The man narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "You must understand the situation we are in. I would like to ask you to assist us." He just smirked in response, because these idiots won't understand anything until everything falls apart. A boy with a tablet ran up to the head of the department. He had urgent news. In disbelief, Lee Seon-ho picked up the screen and stared at it in shock. Kang Yu-sung laughed. "It looks like the Player Academy will be closing after a year of operation." There was a sensation in the news. Players were being accepted into the academy through connections. But where did they get the video? The director apparently forgot that the player is supported by the head of intelligence. The man turned angrily towards the Hero King, shaking with hatred and aggression. The provocation points increased many times, and the clown ruler was delighted with the contractor's actions. Kang Yu-sung received a gift from him. A red box with a yellow ribbon appeared in the air. The guy walking down the street turned around at this, slightly surprised. He smiled broadly and warmly and genuinely thanked me for the gift. Kang Yu-sung asked Mr. Park if it was scary that the intelligence department had done such a thing, to which he heard the answer. It's okay. The government doesn't like them either. They are always arguing with each other. The elder one stood calmly, crossing his arms over his chest. Kang Yu-sung asked to be taken to the 5th-level tower since they were together. After this, the driver asked if the guy was pushing himself, to which he simply waved it off, saying everything was fine. The tower's mission was to travel across the desert, and the goal of the raid was to protect the caravan and deliver the items safely. The player moved to the tower, immediately landing in the thick of things. This always happens. Kang Yu-sung immediately jumped into the fight. He cut through the alien monsters with his icy blade, confidently and without panic. As a savior, the player appears at the perfect time, which helps him be even more impressive. The Hero King used his powers to separate the swords and control their thoughts. Responding to the cries of people, he landed on the hot sand. The crowd looked at the guy with admiration. "Are you by any chance?" Yu-sung interrupted them, saying that he didn't care what they called him. The people in turbans rejoiced. The messenger of light was now with them. The player had a bad feeling about this, so he asked again if there was anything else to be afraid of besides monsters. This was the territory of the Divine Kingdom, so there was no need to worry about attacks from pagans. It took another 3 days to reach his destination, which made Yu-sung regret the lack of rest. He assured the desert dwellers that they shouldn't worry about monsters while he was around, and they could sleep peacefully. The boys asked him how they could thank him for his mercy and kindness. The guy was counting on the necklace of vitality, an accessory that restored health and slightly increased speed. A reminder of a gift from the ruler came in a tablet. It was surprising that it was made by hand. Obtained a highest grade growth stone, an item for the hero rank. This worthy artifact would not be of use now, so Yu-sung decided to save it for later. A flock of scorpions with purple tails raced across the sand at great speed. The player summoned a shadow beast, allowing it to feast on monsters. It was of course troublesome, but you can't trust absolutely everything to your spirits. The Hero King rushed into battle, aiding the Dark One with his ice swords. The blades moved with just thoughts, a stunning sight. It's a pretty useful ability for combat, and Yu-sung found it quite amusing. After another spill of green blood from the monster, the level was raised. Wiping the green stains from his face, the boy thought that it was finally over. But it was not to be. A huge monster of unrealistic size appeared behind him. An adult sand predator with huge tentacles instead of a mouth emerged from under the sand. It seemed like the night's sleep had come to an end. Kang Yu-sung smiled and looked at the monster in front of him. He summoned the dark cat again, and it went into killer mode, snapping its mouth viciously. The animal rushed into battle, causing damage to the huge, predatory worm. Copper swords came to the rescue, separated pieces of one mane. The blades cut through the yellow shell, digging into the flesh and spraying green blood all over the sides. The player just had to stand in place and control it all with the power of thought. The weapons swirled around the monster in a wild, icy dance, and damage flowed like a river. Skill levels increased. Sword control. Ice sword creation. In the morning, the caravan continued its journey through the hot desert dunes. Knights in armor with a red cross, horses, people in turbans and carriages walked forward on the burning sand. The player turned around, surprised that there were knights there to begin with. And what exactly were these brave warriors, according to the merchants, doing last night? Kang Yu-sung was interested in. The soldiers' priority was to protect the goods from the carts. So even in such a situation, they did not abandon the contents. The player asked what faction the knights belonged to which he heard the answer, "They are noble warriors of the Order of the Bloody Cross." The people in armor looked at each other with anger, without a drop of trust, frightening everyone around with their very appearance. "Hey, noble knights, are you carrying a golden calf?" the boy asked them. The messenger of light, that is, Kang Yu-sung, should not have paid attention to the carriages. He needed to concentrate on the task that God had entrusted to him. This is how the knights tried to intimidate him. These knights used the aura of the heart, and in addition, a messenger of light descended to them. Apparently, they were carrying out a serious task. But after the knight's words, the player only became more interested, which he quickly said. He was interested in what goods required such a level of protection. The man in the turban tried unsuccessfully to stop Kang Yu-sung from being curious. He, in turn, suddenly grabbed the merchant by the scruff of the neck and covered the two of them with an ice shield. He suddenly shouted, "If you don't want to die here, everyone, duck!" Arrows flew at the caravan of soldiers, and in the distance, riders could be seen running like a horde towards their allies. People ran in panic, screaming about the heretics' attack. "Evil disbelievers! How dare they invade the territory of the sacred kingdom!" The shouts continued. The riders, all dressed in gray cloaks and armed with bows and arrows, advanced forward towards the breach. Kang Yu-sung had already rushed into battle with an ice blade, almost attacking the enemy warriors. Suddenly, a sudden realization stopped him. This guy. A desert elf? A guy with long, pointed ears was hiding under a gray hood. Kang Yu-sung protected the two of them from the magic arrows with a shield. Do they use aura too? An involuntary question appeared in my head. The elf attacked the player with a blade and shouted that he was a scoundrel and an infidel. In response, Kang Yu-sung deflected the blade with his ice sword, the dark one jumping from behind. Putting a knife to the elf's throat, the guy asked the question, "What exactly is in that cart?" He didn't answer anything but shouted to his brothers to ignore him and continue shooting from their bows. The player did not give up and put the blade to the enemy's throat, asking again what they were transporting. Kang Yu-sung found out what was being transported in that carriage and ordered the elf to leave. He would do them a favor. But wouldn't it be better to get another chance than to die here now? The enemy didn't think so. The player released the elf, causing surprise. He turned to follow the herd of enemies, watching them with his eyes. A knight ran up from behind, his armor gleaming in the scorching sun. "Why did you allow the heretics to escape?" I heard the following in response. "We need to make sure of one thing first." The player walked in the other direction, causing him to be shouted to stop. They put a sword to his neck, asking where he was going. He needed to check something. "I can't let you through, even if you are a messenger of light. Better get out of my way while I ask you like a human being," the shadow beast growled deep in his throat from behind. Amidst cries of protest, the player opened the gate in front of him. He opened the doors, causing sand to fly in all directions. The guy offered his help in saving what was in front of him. There, kneeling, sat an elf in a red dress, with a blue crystal glowing on her neck. "Do you think I need the sympathy of some infidel?" Saria, the princess of the NOOB kingdom, shouted back. The ruler of light warned the player regarding his actions. "Do not neglect your duties. Fulfill the duty of light." "Well, since you ask, I have no other choice." The ice blade glowed in his hands, and it was this maple tree that broke the chains that bound the princess. The player completed the hidden Save the Princess objective and received 300,000 achievement points. The knight stared in shock at all this action, a hurricane of sand swirling in the background. Different signs started flashing in front of Kang Yu-sung. He just smiled. "The game is ruined, but freedom is an amazing thing, I must tell you." Signs began flashing in front of Kang Yu-sung. Raid target changed. Tower level increased. Threats from the ruler of light. The guy smiled warmly at the elf who was sitting in front of it. One of the tower's forces turned against the player, and angel-like creatures flew from the sky. The rulers of light appeared, the halos above their heads glittering with light. The knights turned against Kang Yu-sung, believing him to be a heretic who did not deserve to live. The princess rebuked the player, who remarked that the knights had become too bold. He smiled at the girl. "Don't worry, I have someone to support me too." The ruler of the shadow supported the player's decision. "Away with the light! Let there be darkness!" The Shadow Council granted the guy the Veil of Absolute Darkness buff. The knights, in panic, shouted that they could not see anything in the impenetrable darkness. Kang Yu-sung smiled happily. "I knew they gave out better rewards on this side." In the pitch blackness, the knights were cut by icy spikes. Blood splashed across their white armor. Huge holy beings with golden wings continued to descend from the sky. The creatures didn't look like anything ordinary. They looked like robots from another universe. only more angelic. Calling upon the light, they controlled the power with their own hands, trying to illuminate what was around them. And they illuminated the corpses of warriors, mercilessly crucified on black, sharp thorns. A hurricane of black darkness and bright magic swirled around the fluttering angels. The deaths of the warriors angered the minions of light. One of them was already beginning to get indignant. At that very moment, he was interrupted by the blade of an ice sword, which sharply split the creature into two parts. Kang Yu-sung killed an angel by jumping and swinging his sword. Other light beings couldn't understand how a pathetic mortal could do such a thing. The Light Watchers faction began to feel an irreversible dislike towards the player. But the goodwill of the Shadow Council has increased significantly. The player's status in the faction has been increased, and their predisposition to darkness has increased. And also, an immeasurable number of factions watched the action in the tower. The world of towers and the world inside the towers are not the same thing. The Knights of the Bloody Cross and the Elves are creatures from the tower, making up its world. However, the rulers and their forces are on a higher level, representing the world of the towers themselves. The player is a mediator between the two worlds, the force that allows the ruler to intervene in the world of the tower. However, the players are not pathetic puppies who unquestioningly carry out the will of the rulers. They are looking for hidden meanings in all of this. Inside the tower, players can make their own decisions. As Kang Yu-sung predicted in the Shadow Council, he will be better rewarded when he rebels against the light. And if you have an idea, you don't need to doubt whether to implement it. The player's vision becomes clear for only a moment. The power of the buff is certainly amazing, but it is removed at the end of the battle. The enemy was clearly strong, so the Hero King pushed off from his place. He ran forward between the bodies falling dead. He apologized to the elven princess, who looked at what was happening in fear. The girl was scared when a man approached her. She was clearly afraid of death. Kang Yu-sung lifted the light body into his arms, carefully taking the princess away from the battlefield. Having put her on her feet, he called his shadow beast to him. Having obtained an artifact in the form of a crystal, he asked the Dark One to eat the item and guard the elf. By squeezing the item in his hand, the player activated a top-tier growth stone. The boy sprinkled pink crystal shards onto the shadow animal. The princess noticed the impending danger and called out to the alien. Next to them at this time, the Dark One grew tens of times, with the help of the artifact raising his rank. The elf cowered in fear before the bright arrows that flew from the enemy towards them. But instead of killing them, the weapon crashed into a huge ball of darkness with which the cat had covered the owner and the princess. The arrows burned through the darkness but did not go further, while black thorns emerged from the darkness for protection. Kang Yu-sung was delighted with this result and summoned a shadow blade to his aid. The angelic enemies cried out in response, "It's no use, mortal! Your blade cannot touch us!" Without listening to this, Kang Yu-sung climbed the black thorns, an ice sword in his hands. The Guardian of Light also summoned his sword, which appeared as light in his palms, after which they clashed in a duel, the player and the keeper. In the eyes of the creature from the tower, Kang Yu-sung's weapon gleamed like an icy flame. In several places, he fought with a couple of creatures at once, with swords divided into 8 parts. Close combat with them was too much for Kang Yu-sung to be off balance. Will he have to move from place to place all the time? Suddenly, something distracted the player's attention, and he turned to the side in fear. The angelic being pierced his shoulder with its sword of light. Why were the creatures so strong even under the debuff? The player had to spend too much energy fighting dozens of angels. Trying to fight back on one side, he received injuries on the other. He decided that it would be better to deal with everyone at once. The guy tried to open some kind of portal into the darkness. "I'll have to use this." At this time, the creatures did not want to leave the guy so easily. A painful groan came from Kang Yu-sung's chest, his face frozen in a grimace of shock. The sword of light pierced the player's chest, spraying blood all over the place. The angel stood behind, killing his enemy from behind, his eyes glowing with hatred for the infidel. Ice swords fell to the ground, drawing the attention of the other angels to this action. This was their chance. They wanted to tear the lifeless body into pieces. The battle-tested adventurer blessing is set to 100% with a chance below 50%. The location of the Sword of Light is initialized. Kang Yu-sung smiled. He cheated death. The angel, who thought he had killed the player, stared in shock and fear at what was happening. "Stop! "Something strange is happening here," he shouted to his partners. But it was too late. The player activated the swords. Ice blades swirled in a merciless hurricane dance around him. It was time to end this fight and the angels. The swords controlled by the guy crashed into the other people's light bodies one after another. The fragments they broke into created a beautiful web of blue light in the air. The Guardians of Light fell down lifelessly, their wings folded and their eyes closed. The visibility buff has been removed since the fight ended, and Kang Yusung's levels have been increased. The guy looked at what was happening around him with a sigh. Knights of the Bloody Cross, barrels, chariots, and fragments were scattered across the sand. A small black paw touched Kang Yusung's boot, drawing his attention downwards. The guy crouched down, smiling at his shadow cat. "Oh, how did you get smaller?" An elven princess stood behind him and called out hesitantly to the stranger in a thin voice. "Why did you betray your people and go so far from me?" The guy just calmly replied, continuing to pet the cat. "They reward better on this side." The girl trembled. "But weren't they your people? If you expect to ask for ransom, I am sick with a terrible disease, hatred of people." Kang Yusung looked up at the lady. "Sorry, your question is just weird, princess." The boy stroked the cat, praising it for a job well done. A few days later, on the border of the elven kingdom of NOOB, the player and the princess looked at the Brahma. The girl turned to her companion. "I'm in your great debt, thank you, alien." He mentioned the award, and in response he heard irony about his ability to choose words. The girl extended her hand, offering to take something from her as a reward. Received an A-rank trust mark, a unique reward. A token of trust was given to the player by Princess Saria. Its true value is unknown yet, but it seems it will come in handy one day. Princess Saria of the Elven Kingdom was kidnapped, but the player returned her unharmed, and later, when the king dies, she will become the queen. Later, in our world, the train arrived in Busan. Kang Yusung looked out the window. 4 hours ago, he was told that he needed to go to Busan, and when asked if anything had happened there, the answer was, "Not yet, but later something will happen," and that is why the player needed to move there. Natasha Ivanova, a world-famous criminal player, one of the black players. Hiding from the Russian government, she illegally arrived in Busan and began to raid the towers with her 4 accomplices. She has the legendary ability card, Veil of Absolute Darkness. A joke about Busan and zombies was heard over the phone, and Yusung wearily asked to just order him a car. Ivanova's group entered the tower with the 5th level of difficulty, and the player also needed to go there. It was a zombie apocalypse tower, and the goal of the raid was simply to survive until the appointed time. Kang Yusung entered the Tower of Tut. At the beginning of the century, the pharmaceutical company Tylel discovered a deadly virus, and this led to the city being blocked off. Kang Yusung knew that nothing normal could be expected from the 5th level tower. Survival was worth it from the hungry infected, and Tylela's secret support squad. A huge monster molded from a pile of infected bodies stood before Kang Yusung. The guy immediately rushed at him with a weapon. Is it right to call this a zombie? Something stopped the player. He stared forward in surprise. There stood a dark one. The black cat glowed with purple magic, enthusiastically wagging his tail. The cat smiled slyly, drooling from his sharp fangs. The shadow of the animal crawled forward towards the monster, enveloping it in a shroud. Enormous jaws, like those of an oceanic white whale, swallowed a zombie-like creature. The jaws clamped down on the monster, crushing bones and spraying blood in all directions. After this, the whale jumped into the ground, dissolving into a blot of darkness on it. Kang Yusung remarked admiringly, "Wow, the growth stone has really changed you. But why the whale shape?" The cat just meowed, staring sweetly at its owner with its glowing purple eyes. Behind the player, a woman in a tight suit clapped loudly. Natasha Ivanova and her allies came up from behind, waiting for Kang Yusung. The red-haired lady, spreading her arms, called the guy a hero of heroes. She noticed that someone like him could not leave her, a villain, alone. The guy replied to her, "Natasha, you are a member of the Red Mafia, which is being persecuted by the Russian government. And you illegally landed with your accomplices in the port of Busan," the brunette finished. The girl just giggled. Was he really going to arrest her and put her in jail? Taking out his ice swords, Kang Yusung refused. "I just don't know what you're like, so relax for now." Judging me on behalf of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service is a rather ignoble task, isn't it? I assume your allies are also in the screen. Did you intend to surround me and feed me to the zombies? Yuson rushed into battle. Natasha also pressed forward. Did you know that I was from intelligence and you had the courage to come here? Do you think I planned on becoming a zombie snack? The guy smiled. He simply had no other way to steal the legendary ability. Natasha somersaulted away from the swords that were flying at her. She shouted to her allies not to relax and to attack the enemy. Kang Yusung jumped back from the blow that shattered the rocks on the ground, sending huge shards flying. Her guys opened fire with firearms. Machine guns aimed bullets at the player. He, in turn, deftly ran away from the bullets, weaving between the cartridges. He jumped from behind the red-haired lady with an ice sword in his hands. She showed him the middle finger with a crazy smile on her lips and giggled. But there was no one under the blade of the sword that dug into the asphalt. Shadows flickered around Yuson. Did the Russian girl really disappear? Did she manage to get away? The guy abruptly turned the shield behind him. 3 shooters and 1 sniper. It might have worked once, but something was clearly wrong. As far as the player knew, the Shadow Veil debuff was currently not affecting everyone. So how did the allies still manage to shoot accurately on target? A shadow animal sat on the player's shoulder, meowing. Oh, right, the reason must be something else, Darky. I'll need your help. The brunette addressed the animal. The ball of wool and shadows meowed approvingly, agreeing with its owner. The archers were talking to each other. The ice shield is too strong. We need to change tactics. A black cat crept up behind one of them, drawing attention to itself. And when the enemy turned, the Dark One released its thorns, tearing him to pieces. The guys started shouting at each other, saying that they needed to get out of the cat's shadow. Kang Yusung crossed his arms over his chest. Gee, can you see the shadow of the Dark One? In fact, it wasn't that important at the moment. A sharp blade in a woman's hands approached Kang Yusung's throat. The girl asked not to underestimate the Russian intelligence service. Let's talk about the achievement points you got the other day for clearing a level 5 tower. There were an unusual number of them. You apparently defended in hard mode, but afterward you only went to low-level towers, just like last season. First we had to get rid of the cat and then talk. But Kang Yusung asked Natasha to answer how she was going to kill him. The guy took the stranger's hand in his own and put the knife to his chest, pressing. But I'm not real. The knife passed through the flesh, revealing an illusion. The body was just a hologram. The red-haired girl screamed in disbelief, and the ice swords were already at her throat. I suppose it wasn't a veil of absolute darkness from the start, but a trap to lure me out. You created her to cloud my perception. Yusung swung his sword. Since the ability only works with the enemy's sensations, there is only one option. This is a legendary rank illusion creation ability that allows you to manipulate what your target sees. Yuson stood in front of Natasha, triumphantly delivering his monologue. The girl spoke the word Oculus. The shadows dispersed, leaving only ice shields and swords next to them. The Russian agent fell to her knees, disappointed that she had been discovered so easily. You are good at deceiving others, but it seems that this is not your strength. And now it is the girl who will have to become food for the zombies. Kang Yusung raised his hand. The player died, but something distracted the blue-eyed player's attention. Taylela's secret forces have detected the presence of survivors. A large number of survivors were found in Area B-16. An army of survivors with a large number of weapons came out onto the walls around. They wanted destruction. At this time, the shooters, immobilized by the shadows of the Dark One, agreed that they needed to run. What descended from the walls were not survivors at all, but huge robots armed with guns. And they followed some secret protocol. The death notice for the unnamed player has appeared again. This happened after an explosion near the robot. Meanwhile, Yuson was wondering if he could stop it, or if he should turn off the shield first. A projectile of fire flew at them and Natasha, and complete chaos began. The player covered his face from the ice shards flying towards him. Something happened, and a huge dial with mechanical gears at the bottom appeared in front of them. A creature emerged from the ground. 2 people died without using their achievement points. And it's all because of you! The little elf pointed at Kang Yusung. The guy smiled at the merchant, asking how he could make it up to her. She offered to buy him a set of cards for which she could forgive him. He, in turn, said that it was possible to sell to Natasha. When the store opened, there could be no talk of any reconciliation. She offered the Russian spy to spend achievement points. The fights in front of the store made the elf sad, and the players knew what that could mean. "Auntie, you're going to die. Buy a deck of cards. If you get a mythical one, you might survive." Yusan declined the offers to buy the cards as best he could, smiling nervously. Natasha sullenly said that she was ready to spend all 374,000 achievement points. She wanted to spend them on decks with random ability. Kang Yusung sat sadly and waited for Natasha to show her cards. She only came across common cards with the most basic abilities. Only occasionally were there rare cards, which made the girl upset. The merchant only encouraged me, told me not to get upset, and promised that the mythical one would still drop. The red-haired lady bit her nails out of nerves and anxiety, going through all the regular cards that had fallen out. Yusan watched the action wearily. They say watching a house burn down is the most fun thing to do. All the regular cards fell to the floor, piling up at the women's feet. Natasha thought she was opening the last deck, but it wasn't true. She still had 7 left. She needed to get at least 1 useful card or death was assured. The girl didn't care about the mythical map anymore. Even the legendary one would have done. But she was out of luck. There were still 4,000 points left. The elf offered potions. A male player said that the sales period was over, and in response, he was offered to buy a deck. Considering the sudden deaths before, and the fact that she sacrificed so much and failed, it is very likely that a legendary one is about to appear. These were the words the merchant used to entice people to buy at least 1 deck. The ruler of hell was shocked, but Yusung couldn't support her here. The red-haired girl yelled at the player in pure Russian obscenities out of anger. The guy finally agreed to buy 1 card, but 10,000 achievement points were deducted from his balance. A normal ice arrow ability card was obtained, but Kang Yusung already had one, so he simply leveled it up by 2 stars. What happened next? The guy called Natasha by name. She, in turn, began to angrily yell at him again, in a language incomprehensible to the player. The brunette asked the merchant what she was talking about, and the elf just said goodbye to him. While Ivanova was yelling at the Korean behind them, something exploded again, and time in the tower started ticking as usual again. A heavy robotic leg stepped onto the shards of ice on the asphalt. A secret protocol was observed. All witnesses had to be eliminated. Natasha and the Korean turned around to see all this. The girl was unhappy with her situation. Yusan swung the blade of his sword. It passed through Natasha's throat, and the player rushed into battle. Natasha's lifeless body fell onto the cold asphalt as the Korean ran to fight the robots. He struck one after another with his ice sword, sparing no effort in dodging the other person's weapons. The Taylella agents rose into the air, and Yusan created something similar to cold shurikens. He epically dropped all his weapons while fighting off several enemies at once. Explosions, shockwaves, fragments, all of this flew at the player's body. The guy smiled. "Wow, damn! Taylella has that many resources? I think I'll buy some pharmaceutical stocks when I get home." He clenched his palm, a stream of icy magic forming inside his hand. Beautiful ice fragments swirled around him like a hurricane. But the shares he was going to buy were clearly not from the company that was here now. All these fragments crashed into the huge robots, thus disabling them. Kang Yusung cleared the zombie apocalypse tower and received a random gear coupon as a reward. The guy took Natasha's Oculus card and immediately returned to the real world. When the tower was cleared, the defeated players returned to the ground. It seems 2 of the shooters died at the hands of the Darkling, and the other 2 were in too much pain to get up. This only happened if they didn't die in the tower. The Korean praised his enemies by raising his hand up. Natasha rose to her feet in disbelief. "How is this possible?" In response, "Do you want to be arrested? You can turn yourself in. It's none of my business." "So you're just going to leave me and walk away?" The girl couldn't understand. "Yeah, go tell yours how amazing the Hero King is and that it's time to stop messing around." Yusung stepped forward. After all, dead people don't talk, and he needed someone to convey praise to him. Later, in a call with Mr. Park, Yusung had to justify leaving Natasha and her allies alive. The elder did not understand why his student left those who tried to kill him alive. But Yusung is not a psychopathic killer. He was calming Park Tae-chik down. "You know how to talk, you fucking good-natured guy. And why did those bastards come? was heard on the other end of the call. "And why is it that I adore you, Yuson, you eccentric hooligan?" The gentleman asked the younger one not to overexert himself on the way and not to make him worry. Kang Yusung thanked him from the bottom of his heart for his concern and ended the call. Player, alien, apostle. Inside the tower, the player is called by different names. Weapon, military power level indicator, live unbalanced technique, hero. But the players are not just heroes, they are war heroes. For example, Natasha Ivanova. There are those who kill the enemies of their homeland without a doubt. Do they really want Kang Yusung to become such a hero too? In today's world, there is no concept of a hero. A guy was walking down the street and he was recognized. The boy realized that he had been careless in the morning and pulled the fur hood over his head. The couple who recognized the player argued about not pointing the finger at the thug, the girl protested, saying that it was an image and that Kang Yusung was actually kind. The discussion then moved on to the fact that he is the most active player and that he donates money to charity. The guy just kept repeating that it was all just an image for the public. However, the player was caught before he could get home. The interviewers noticed him, and the only good choice for the player was to enter the first tower he came across. It would have been better to rest here. It was a tower of sword and magic. The goal is to complete the story. The characters rejoiced. The holy ceremony of calling the warrior was a success. Kang Yusung was surprised by the name. Saint? Nice to meet you. You've answered our prayers, warrior from another world. The girl looked down at the player. She introduced herself. I am Alicia Celestine, the 37th saint. It smiled at the hero king. It was obvious enough. They shook hands and Yusung replied, I'm a hero who saves worlds quickly and without any problems. And then he cordially asked how he could serve the saint and her kingdom. She said that she had to explain how things were going here, and the player suggested that the problem was in the confrontation between holy beings and demons. That's exactly it. There was a war going on between holy beings and demons on the continent. After half an hour of long stories about ancient weapons and demon attacks, Kang Yusung impatiently asked if they could start already. Oh, but I've only just begun to tell the story. You need to go to court, the saint continued. The guy crossed his arms over his chest, exhaling in displeasure. And then he turned around and started walking, which made the saint run after him. You don't even know where the arch is. She grabbed the player's arm. But even the girl didn't know where she was, which meant the difference wasn't that big. And while the saint was trying to stop Kang Yusung, a roar was heard across the sky. A hurricane of red flames lit up everything around. And from this very hurricane, huge paws emerged, trying to scoop up people. The saint looked up, not believing her own eyes. How could demons set foot on holy ground? She shouted at the monster. The knights immediately rushed into battle, trying to harm the newly appeared monster. No one around understood how this was even possible. Why didn't divine magic and aura blade work for the villain? The demon, with a smile on his face, squeezed a small magic ball between his fingers. The player immediately rushed into battle, commanding everyone else to retreat back. The saints shouted that they would help him in any way they could, practically jumping into battle with the hero. But he didn't let her do this, blocking her path with an ice shield. And while the girl was being led away in the other direction, she continued to shout, Be careful! The saint couldn't believe that Kang Yusung was putting himself in such great danger for them. She fell on her knees and began to pray, Goddess, grant us your compassion. The rest of the residents followed her lead, begging for kindness and mercy for themselves and the warrior. Suddenly the shields fell, and the ruler called out to the player in fear. He took his head in his hands, trembling slightly from pain and unpleasant sensations. The demons sent him signals. Soon the world will plunge into darkness. So don't get in our way and go away, warrior. The words came from the player's mouth. The saint turned blue from shock. She couldn't understand how all this was possible. Yusung turned to her. There was no time to waste. He needed to go to the arch. The ruler believed that the end of the world was near, and she had an idea. Immediately after that, she was already racing on a horse, the wind fluttering the purple strands of her hair. Kang Yusung galloped behind, happy that they were finally speeding up. He turned to the Dark One, thanking him for his excellent portrayal of the demon's growls. The Shadow Beast responded to the thanksgiving with a tick-him roar. I should hold off on the Shadow Blade since I've resorted to using the Oculus, the player continued quietly. The saint asked again if she should slow down, to which she received a sharp refusal. Yu-sung, pleased with himself, continued to praise his abilities. They arrived at the home of the Adventurers Guild. At the checkout, Yu-sun asked if they had anything that would help him get through the maze, and the cashier offered him a license. The player and the saint were given queue number 216. Wait a little. The couple sat down at a table in the tavern to while away the time over a cup of tea. The saint suddenly began to explain, "This place, Garcia, is a city with a labyrinth. He is located between saints and demons and remains neutral." Kang Yu-sung noticed that this was the perfect place to hide the arch, an ancient weapon. Someone shouted their number, calling them over, and the player immediately stood up from his seat. Now it was necessary to sign papers agreeing to all the rules. The saint was already reaching out to do this when Yu-sun stopped her, ordering her to wait. No one is responsible for death in the labyrinth, and the body and property are transferred to the city for use. Do I have to sign this? He was told that everyone has the same opportunities, and that adventures go hand in hand with risk. And it was all a personal choice and responsibility of adventure hunters. Yu-sun noted grimly how neatly this denial of responsibility demonstrated the value of life. The girl at the reception desk smiled broadly and wished me luck on my adventure. The saint and the player entered the ancient labyrinth, illuminating the path with blue light. Yu-sung activated his ice sword, asking the girl if she was ready for battle. A huge monster, resembling a cross between a rat and a boar, suddenly jumped on the couple. The player stopped the beast with the blade that it jumped on, and the saint, without a second's hesitation, used the power of magic, directing a beam at the creature. The beam cut the monster's flesh in half, and blood flowed in a stream onto the floor. Then the fifth level began, and they descended to it surprisingly quickly. The guy praised the saint and her fighting skills. "The blessing magic is amazing." The girl noted, "We met adventurers who held back the animals, opening the passage for us further." She was very grateful to them, and Yu-sun understood that they were only glad that they were not interfered with while hunting. When seekers help each other, even demons don't seem so scary. But even without this, there was no need to worry. Yu-sun would take the saint to the ancient weapon. "Welcome to the newbies," shouted the huge bouncer in front. "You didn't pay, but you dared to go into the labyrinth on your own business." Yu-sun asked if they were local bandits, which alarmed and upset the saint. He didn't know what they were called here, but in every labyrinth there were such people. Usually they were called bandits or adventurers hunters. The bandit confirmed and then asked to give up all his property. The saint suddenly cried out pitifully, "Wait! Let's discuss everything." The player nodded. "Talk is good, Mr. Bandit. Will you listen to my story? There were once creatures of the Celestine and demons. The demons were going to turn the world into ruins. For your information, I am a warrior from another world, and I have come to save yours. To do this, I need to find an ancient weapon, and I seek him with her, the 37th saint of the sacred kingdom of Celestine. Would you be so kind as to let us go further ahead?" The bandits stared at the pair silently and stupidly, perplexed by what was happening. The biggest and most important of them shouted, "Who does he think he is?" Others suggested that the player had probably lost his mind from fear. The saint stared at them in fear and surprise, breathing out in horror. Kang Yu-sung gritted his teeth in anger. He knew it. The warrior rushed forward sharply, first raising the blade of the ice sword up. A trail of magical power from the sword passed over one of the bandits, blood splattering around. This blood was from Yu-sun cutting off someone else's hand with his weapon. As soon as other enemies tried to swing at the player, their hands were also cut off. Something like a portal opened behind them, and red flames illuminated the room. "On what grounds are you touching my people?" the tall lady with an axe on her shoulder asked. "It seems you're much more capable than you seem," the blonde smiled. The saint was surprised. "Don't you work for the Adventurers Guild?" And the guy concluded that the guild was probably in cahoots with the bandits. They lead newcomers into dangerous situations and force them to calculate the value of their lives in monetary terms. And if they fail to pay, the bodies go up for sale. This realization upset the saint. She did not understand how it was possible to act like this. The blonde laughed. "Ha ha! Are you that naive? How did you ever expect to become an adventurer? But you should have thought about this earlier." She pounced on the player with her axe. The ice sword protected the boy from a fatal blow. Yu-sun smiled behind his sword. "Watch your step." The blonde frantically turned back, noticing the rays of shadows. The room was lit up with black flames, Everyone around was frightened by this. In the middle of all these shadows sat a small black cat. The player called out to the saint, informing her that the passage was open and they could proceed further. She agreed, and the two of them walked further down the corridor through a wooden arch. The guys came out into some very strange room with a bunch of tall columns. They decided to spend the night here and continue in the morning, made a fire, and sat on the floor. The saint looked very depressed after her encounter with the bandits. Noticing this, Yu-sung asked the girl why she suddenly became so sad. Isn't she used to facing the real world without her title? The world is about to be destroyed, and people are fighting each other, the ruler sighed sadly. And then she was surprised. Did the warrior really get used to this injustice? I'm not sure. The world is the same no matter where you are. The guy thoughtfully bit his lip. The saint asked again if this was true. She simply did not want to believe in such a thing. And then she asked about the warrior's hometown, looking at the flames of the fire. The guy began his story. My hometown has experienced several crises. We didn't have anyone like you who would know what to do and stop the constant unrest. Not at first, but I think by the third time I'd already gotten used to what was happening. But once I came to my senses, it seemed to me that everyone was only concerned with themselves. Yusan crossed his arms over his chest, breathing heavily. The saint asked him, "What about him?" He just smiled. "And me? What do you think?" The girl thought, looking first at the player, then at the flame of the fire in front of them. The saint's answer surprised the warrior. He stared at her with his blue eyes, and then he laughed sharply, throwing his head back. His words made everyone laugh very much. The couple sat in the silence of the stone room, resting before a hard day. But Yusan was surprised by this silence. He was sure that it was high time. A merchant suddenly and abruptly appeared in front of the player, again offering him to buy a card. The guy asked her to show him the full list of her products first. A few days later, on level 100, the player fought against huge demons that wanted to take the arch first. The saint helped him with her power of blessing, begging the gods for alms. A player with his ice sword into the mouth of a giant snake, intending to cut it. He swung and successfully cut a hole with the magic blade. The jellyfish that was part of this snake suffered massive damage from the shockwave. "Oh, demon god, forgive me for my betrayal and for not being able to get the arch." The level was raised, but 10,000 achievement points were received. But Kang Yu-sung was tired of all this. Do demons have timing issues? Why are they showing up when I've already passed the test? The saint smiled broadly and praised the player, a green light illuminating their faces. Green rays appeared from the sky, frightening both the girl and the warrior next to her. A stone pedestal appeared in front of them, above which a small magic crystal glowed. It was an arch, but it looked too simple for an ancient weapon. Yusan received the quest item. Suddenly, the entire labyrinth began to shake. Stones fell around the couple. When the boys came out of the labyrinth, it was a great relief for both of them. "Well done, Saint Alicia and the warrior from another world," someone called out to them. "Thanks to you, the imperial task of placing the arch will be easier to complete. The power of the arch must be in the hands of the empire. No, in my hands. Come on, give it to me." This was the first prince of the Drago Empire, and it seems he was not on the couple's side. The prince again asked for the ancient weapon, smiling a snow-white smile. "We can't! The power of the Ark must be used to protect the world from demons," the saint replied. "Don't worry, when I collect all the fragments, the demons will bow to my will." "The subject of the task came to me on its own," Kang Yu-sung replied. "It seems you don't understand the meaning of my words. The time has come for the Knights of the Empire to prove their loyalty and valor." The scenario came to an end, and the army of the demonic empire went on the offensive. The first prince of the Drago Empire and his loyal guards, the Black Guard, have come for the power of the Ark. Kang Yu-sung used his sword-splitting power, and the saint began praying again. She bestowed her protection upon the player, as well as sacred armor, magic boost, and an aria of valor. Ice swords cut into the knights' bodies, and they fell dead to the ground. Suddenly, the soldiers started talking about retreating, which made the prince too angry. He broke the purple crystal in his hand, gritting his teeth in anger. The first prince, Milvas Drago, uses the power of the Ark, and a sign appears before the player's eyes. The boy felt something coming, and then the saint shouted that the prince was using the arch. An explosion of purple magic flew like a shockwave at the knights and the couple, who protected themselves from the damage with an ice shield. The magic died down a bit, and the prince appeared, transformed into something even more terrifying. His subordinates began to ask again if everything was all right with their highness. In response, they heard, "Out of the way, useless nobodies!" The transformed creature swung its sword. The prince had turned into a demonic monster, and now the player was asking for his buffs to be updated. A crater appeared around the demon due to its gravity, and flames swirled in the air like hurricanes. The player, wearing his sacred armor and a healing buff, quickly struck the enemy with his blade. This angered the newly minted monster, his huge fangs biting into each other with a creaking sound. "Do you think I won't catch you if you hide in the fire?" A giant hand tried to catch Yu Sung, but the player did something with a smile on his face, and this made the prince very angry. Did the power really intoxicate the demon so much that he stopped seeing anything? The ice sword turned into a huge beam of magical power, piercing the prince's body. Kang Yu Sung victoriously sheathed his sword, breathing heavily from fatigue. The quest item, the second fragment of the arch, an ancient weapon, was received. The player immediately thought, "What kind of third-rate scene from a mobile game is this?" The fragment rose into the air, and emerald rays of magical light began to emerge from it. The level was increased, and the player reached level 50. It was the perfect ending. Since everything was finished, the warrior offered the arch to the saint, smiling as he held the crystal forward. She looked at the guy in surprise. Did he really want her to take the arch for herself? Who else but a saint? To which the girl replied, "I am not capable enough to possess such power." She asked if it wouldn't be better for her to give the Drago Empire arc. "Think about it this way. It's better to use it yourself than to give it to some idiots," Kang Yu Sung replied. But the girl couldn't be so irresponsible about the incomparable and dangerous power of the arch. Usually, it's precisely because of the burden of responsibility that people like this become madmen, driven by force and destroying the world. But Holy One, you won't fight alone. The arch will help you. The saint took the arch in her hands, looking at it in her palms with surprise and disbelief. "Thank you. Your words make me feel much better." The saint pressed the arch to her heart. Kang Yu Sung was happy about this, and after their conversation, the guy disappeared, heading to his world. The player cleared the tower. Obtaining the arch, Saint Alicia stopped the demon invasion and preserved peace on the continent. The guy only cleared one tower, and a whole week had passed. He thought it would be a great break, but he got too carried away. It was only mid-January now, and Yusan had more important things to do than all this. A few days later, the boy was walking down the street, past houses and bright lights. Fans and paparazzi were chasing him again. "Sir, please give our magazine a chance." The guy abruptly entered another tower to escape from unwanted interviews again. The reporter girl covered her mouth with her hand in fear. "Is this really the Tower of Awakening?" "I have been waiting for you, child with 1,000 faces and 1,000 talents." Yusung responded, "I'll do without your nonsense. Let's get to the test." He started a battle with a man who looked like his double, who exactly resembled him. It was a fake, which, by the way, also exactly repeated his movements. The guy fought him every season, but he still felt uneasy every time. The Seraphim's shield repelled absolutely all enemy attacks. The blessing of He Who Cheated Death deflected the instant death blow. The two boys fought in a fierce battle, their swords clashing in a terrible dance of death. Kang Yu-sung tried to summon his shadow beast, Darkling, but summoning a familiar was prohibited in this area. Yusan was upset that this number didn't work out, but he continued the fight without stopping. "Is there anyone here that needs to be dealt with?" The empty one looked up with a question. The face of a huge jester appeared, sorting through the cards in front of the player. The sun was shining outside. It was a calm day, but in the hospital it was not so calm. Mr. Pak Tae-shik ran headlong down the corridor, bursting into the doors at the end of the corridor. Upon arriving at the ward, he stared at Kang Yu-sung, who was lying under IV drips. The guy noticed the person entering the room. "Oh, you came!" Judging by the fact that the player was as sharp-tongued as before, he had already gotten better. "Stop pretending and go and maintain world peace, Hero King." "Are you trying to force me to go to work with a hole in my chest?" Yu-sung asked. "Your ruler is quite peculiar, so the awakening had to go as usual." But it wasn't that serious, according to Kang Yu-sung, who just smiled. Awakening, available from level 50, has a different appearance depending on the ruler. In Yu-sung's case, as a reward for overcoming himself, he would receive Own Talent. In other words, all the cards and stats he had earned so far. That is, all blessings and cards have increased in their level. Kang Yu-sung got everything he wanted, and now he was asking about his next task. We needed to find the villain and beat him up. Who was the serial arsonist? A black player? The boy liked the screams. They were like soothing chords for him. He ordered people to tremble, calling them ignorant people. And he called himself a venerable maestro, showing you the way with his outstanding art. The fire ruler was delighted with him and generously rewarded Bai Dong-su for his work. As always, only the ruler of fire understands my art. Oh no, stupid people with guns have come to stop me again. Men with machine guns aimed at the mysterious arsonist to eliminate the enemy. But suddenly the criminal escaped by entering the 4th-level tower arena. There was a limit on the number of players. Kang Yu-sung calmly walked towards the tower. He looked at the flames that were burning the entire city and took a deep breath. This player wasn't a hero. He was the one who sets the world on fire. He's just an atypical psychopath. The player, the hero king, followed the criminal into the tower. The tower housed a huge arena and no less stands with spectators. The arsonist swung his sword. What fool dared to enter? But seeing the player in front of him, he stared at him in fear. That's right, it's me, you fucking psycho. Kang Yu-sung pulled his sword from its sheath, activating it. Hero King, no one other than you can understand the form of my art, right? The player's response was, I can't believe the world is full of such crazy people. Are you devaluing my art by treating it like some kind of consumer product? Behold my flame! The special ability, Hellfire Orchestra, was activated, and a huge explosion sent Kang Yu-sung flying upwards with a shockwave. Flames poured out of the huge pipes towards the player. The peculiarity of creators is that they act alone, appearing out of nowhere. The arsonist was seriously angered by this. He summoned the kettle drums, which fell like a dome on the player. The boy cut his way back with an ice sword, throwing the shards aside. He warned the enemy that this was his last performance before death, and rushed into battle. The arsonist was very amused by this, and he spun the fireworks in his hands, setting them on fire. My art will never die! Flames lit up around the enemy and he screamed. The player covered his face with his hands holding the weapon, sweat pouring down his face from the heat. And suddenly after that a table appeared in front of the player, notifying him that he had won the duel. Since a player can't kill another player inside the tower, it was necessary to at least finish off the arsonist on the way out. Teleportation to France, Calais, was completed. The arsonist was just delivering his speech. The peculiarity of the creator lies in his sudden death. Kang Yu-sung knew that he was right here. He looked down on everyone. Did he really expect to escape from him? The player attacked the enemy with a sword. Swinging his blade a couple of times, the guy left a magical trail in the air. And while the arsonist was trying to escape, his body turned to ice, starting with his hands. And while the freezing continued, Kang Yu-sung swung his sword behind the arsonist, his eyes glowing with rage. But the blade of the sword did not hit the body. Instead, it crashed into something glowing, like some kind of shield. This surprised Kang Yu-sung. His face was lit up by this golden light and he stared forward. A little further away from the player stood a group of people with a tall girl at the head. She was the one causing this light. The blonde lady with her hand extended said loudly, "Drop your weapon, Mr. Kang Yu-sung." The guy exhaled with displeasure, hit the light ball shield and asked what the girl's business was here for. It was Saint Maria Jaeger, head of the Guild of the Order of the Knights of Salvation. The saint replied that the French government had asked them to help with the investigation, and they were ready all the time. He smiled. Oh, well then, in that case, will you help me make a hole in this arsonist's stomach? But the blonde girl refused. She couldn't allow the player to kill the enemy. After all, murder during arrest was only permitted under certain circumstances. Kang Yu-sung made a sharp joke about the St. Mary's holiness while she continued to talk about the correctness. Just because he acted like a monster doesn't mean you have to be like him. Yu-sung said that killing a black player was just a trifle. The saint refused once again. She was surprised that the guy didn't understand that such an act would lead to global consequences. But suddenly, some stick in the arsonist's hands lit up with a characteristic sound. With a huge and loud bang, fire flew out to the sides. The explosion sent a shockwave through everything around. But nothing came out, remaining inside the barrier of St. Mary. This fact surprised Kang Yuson. To this, the lady simply said that she was just trying to protect him. The criminal has been caught, and that concludes the incident. We will deliver him where he needs to go. Maria told Yuson that he could return home, and the guy didn't need to be asked twice. He casually threw out a phrase about how it was probably in vain that he came here at all. The guy walked in the other direction, and under his feet, in the shadow, a purple color lit up. This immediately resulted in a huge shadow explosion. With the shadow daggers, Yuson tried to kill the enemy. Saint Mary intercepted these shadows, strengthening her shield defense. Don't even try. The player simply sighed in response to this and agreed with his friend. Okay. But in fact, the guy didn't agree. The shadow animal turned into a huge whale's mouth. Saint Mary turned her head towards this picture with horror on her face and clenched her teeth. The girl called out to her friend and stepped towards him, stepping with her thick heel into a fresh pool of blood. The provocation stat quickly increased, and the guy simply spread his arms out to the sides as a sign that he was not guilty of anything. And when the clown ruler became hysterical and Maria's team pointed their swords towards the player. Do you know how many people died because of this madman? Among them were women and children. I couldn't spare him, there was simply no reason. One woman lowered her sword. Although the black players destroyed the world faster than the towers, in St. Mary's opinion, it meant nothing. Will the one who makes a hole in the belly of a monster become one himself? Yuson asked her. Even so, Kang Yusung tilted his head, cynically biting his lips. St. Mary walked up to the boy from behind and put her hand on his shoulder, making him turn around. The blue-eyed girl called out to her friend and, looking into his eyes, said that she did not consider him a master. The guy just smiled at this, silently looking back at her. Shouts came from the guy's phone. Who gives a shit about your fucking humanity? You said you weren't a psychopathic killer. Yuson's head was about to fall off from all these screams. He did everything that they wanted from him. Pak Tae-shik didn't want this to be public. The government begged him to take the player back. He found a plane for tomorrow evening, so Yuson could fly back safely. But the guy had unfinished business. He refused to say what it was, only mentioning something about his personal life. This really angered his intelligence mentor, and the guy calmly turned off the call. Immediately after this, I breathed a sigh of relief, thanking him for his help. And he spread his hands. I am your debtor. This is the least I can do, and there is no reason to refuse. St. Mary, who was sitting on the sofa nearby, said that she was glad to hear all this and smiled. And as soon as Yuson told her to make herself at home, the girl stood up. She hinted that it was time for her to go, which caused Kang Yusung's indignation and disappointment. The guy then asked her if she wanted to say anything else one last time. The blonde smiled kindly at her friend and refused, wishing him only good night. She walked out of the hotel room, slammed the door behind her, and exhaled. She was tormented by one thought. Was it worth asking the player for such a favor? The Revolutionary War Tower, level 6, was located in Paris. Here, inside this very tower, people still rode in horse-drawn carts. The goal of the raid was to complete the scenario, and Yuson was already defending himself from bullets with a shield. He looked out the window, his hair blowing in the wind, and released his ice shurikens. St. Mary was standing inside the chariot, and the player suggested that she block the way a little ahead. According to the scenario, it was necessary to protect the nobles of the king's faction from the revolutionary army. St. Mary jumped out of the carriage and cut a bridge with her sword, thus blocking the way. The two of them then stood back to back, ready to fight, and with swords in their hands. A man put his hand forward and mercilessly asked for a ceasefire. He asked the guests what they were doing there, which surprised Yuson. Haven't you fought before for the good of the revolutionary army, for the sake of the new world spirit? Only through your return, Saint, can we win. Why aren't you fighting for what's right? The boy burst into tears. Why did you side with the corrupt royal nobility? Come back, Saint. Yuson asked the dejected Saint if this was why she needed his help. The guy guessed, it turns out this world wasn't your first. The girl first entered this tower through the 5th level tower, Freedom, Equality, Unity. She fought with them for a good cause without hesitation. The slogan sounded familiar to Yuson, and the saint reminded him that the Great Revolution had the same. Those who believed they were fighting for a just cause are now your enemies, and you feel like a hypocrite. The tower had limited access, and thinking ahead, they had to defeat them to get to the 6th level. Yuson nodded calmly. Then we will do what is required of us and move on to the 6th level. The blue-eyed blonde smiled sweetly, thanking her friend for being there. A shield formed around the couple, and the guy continued to beg his dear guests. A huge beam of icy force quickly and sharply knocked the captain off his feet. The phrase about dear guests made Yuson smile. He exhaled. He suddenly became interested in who these guys thought the players were. This is the last warning. The bridge is destroyed. Retreat. We do not want to shed any more of your blood. One of the warriors picked up the helmet. But I can't retreat even if I die. He would have preferred death in combat. And so he put on his helmet, his armor glowing with blue light. All the warriors around put on their glowing armor and prepared to use magic. For freedom and equality, they activated their weapons with the power within. And the whole crowd began to shoot their beams towards the shield and the two acquaintances. Yuson ducked from the shockwave that destroyed everything around him with a huge explosion. During this, the player Maria used the effect Deep Conviction. Also, along with this, the player Maria used the effect of the Protection of the Seraph. Since the Saint title holder was on Yusung's side, his holy armor increased its effect by 100%. Suddenly, everything slowed down, which greatly surprised and amused the player. Kang Yusung dodged the beam and slashed his sword onto the asphalt. Behind Kang Yuson, Holy Mary activated her powers. A circle glowed beneath her, and the shield in her hand shimmered with magic. The girl rushed into battle, shouting that she would handle it herself, and that the guy should get out of the way. But in this level, the lights go out. This is what caught the fighting blonde off guard. She stood in absolute pitch darkness and called to Yuson for help. He, without a second's hesitation, rushed forward, activating his ice blade and cutting through his enemies with it. It was obvious that the 6th level would be more difficult, but the guy couldn't even imagine that one day he would have to fight in the dark. The player shouted to his partner to activate the shield and thus save her from the attack. The girl replied, "Yusung, lift the curtain of absolute darkness. Otherwise, I won't be able to fight." But she didn't need to do that. The presence of the hero king already enhanced the characteristics of the effects, and experience points were still divided equally between the fighters who fought together in the tower. The girl stood there in bewilderment and looked at all this. The darkness around her began to dissipate. It was thanks to her and her powers that the player had already finished with all the enemies and was now just smiling. He sat astride his shadow beast, from which a faint purple glow emanated. St. Mary was silent. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes under the sun's light. Pools of blood spread across the bridge where the players were located. The guy extended his hand to his friend and ordered her to grab it in order to mount the beast. They needed to catch up with the pot-bellied king, and that's why it was a good idea. You understand that all this will be in vain if the city they fled to falls. The girl climbed onto her friend's bed and told him that he didn't have to do all this, and he replied that it was a lot of fun. With the boost she gave, Yuson would kill everyone for her, and she might not get another chance. But the girl didn't ask him for that reason. She wrapped her arms around her friend's body to hold on to the beast more firmly. "Yes, but I'm already in it for you, aren't I?" They rushed towards the burning city faster and faster. The whole city was on fire. Trees and houses were ablaze with destruction. Women with children and men in ties ran amid shouts and screams. This was the order of the Iron Duke, to dismember all supporters of the old system and not to spare children. Two players entered this horror: Kang Yuson and St. Mary. St. Mary was shocked by what was happening. She stood and quietly whispered about the Duke's city. The girl didn't understand why revolutionaries didn't leave innocent people alive. Yuson calmly replied that this is the case with any ideology, and the same thing happened to the residents of the city they fled from. The personal guard of the iron-blooded Duke, the iron-blooded soldiers, blocked the way. It's ironic that now they are not revolutionaries fighting for a just cause, but simple murderers. A blonde stood with tears in her eyes next to the player who snapped his fingers. The interviewers all pounced on St. Mary with questions about her raid with the hero king. The girl, dejected and unable to utter a word, stood next to the calm Kang Yusung. The guy, with a smile on his face, took it upon himself to explain himself to journalists. What else can a man and a woman do alone in a tower at night? The girl began to sharply protest against her partner's words, but he in turn joked it off. She started screaming while the crowd stood there in disbelief and watched the scene. Yusan's provocation statistics grew staggeringly, and the clown monarch was lying on the ground, on the floor, clutching his stomach. The ghost monarch rewarded him with a ghost skill card set, rare or higher. The assassin monarch rewarded him with a set of assassination skill cards, rare or higher. The monarch guide awarded him with a sixth sense of a guide. Articles about Kang Yu-sung and St. Mary spending the night together were all over the news. It's a bit late to say we're just friends, the guy smiled at his partner. The blue-eyed girl turned to the guy, smiling from ear to ear. Inside the tower of the ice, dead ice dragons flew. Wind and snow raged. Two people, Kang Yu-sung and St. Mary, stood in the middle of all this and watched what was happening together. The girl began to glow with magic, and Yusan began to say something to her, smiling. The girl turned to her friend with a slight smile and asked again, "What is it, dear?" He wanted to use something, but the girl with the sword rushed into battle, not paying any attention to it. After a hot night, you need to cool down a bit. She looked at the huge ice skeletons with empty eyes. A beam of blinding magic flew from Maria towards the army and immediately cleared the tower completely. The two then spent a month successfully raiding many towers. Once they cleared the tower of impenetrable defense, they easily won time after time. They also cleared the towers of Tomb Raider, Monster Hunter, Sand Hell, and Arachnid Queen. The two of them were walking through the airport. Yusan was carrying suitcases. Maria called out to him to say goodbye. "Don't lovers kiss each other goodbye?" The guy turned back. The girl replied, "I envy you, Yu-sung. How can you be so carefree? Even so, I'm glad I have a player I can trust." She smiled broadly. The hero king looked into the blonde's eyes and nodded, saying that he should be the one telling her this. As she was leaving, the girl waved her hand. "Be careful on the way back." And finally, she thanked him, which surprised her friend. She thanked him for everything he had done for this world. Sitting on the plane next to the window, Kang Yu-sung reflected on the words he had spoken earlier. For the sake of this world, you say, it's obvious, but not for everyone, that working together is much more effective. But national interests always come first. We should invite the saint to visit us sometime. He scratched his little animal, who was indignant. How much longer will you scratch me? This frightened the owner. He sharply asked again if his cat could really talk. The animal replied that she had evolved. But why did she speak up only now? Because she was fed up with flirting with the saint. The cat recommended opening a set of cards, and the boy agreed, starting to pray for the hero card. The guy, opening a set of cards, found himself back in the game, with cards from the set flying in front of him. Yusan was confident that once they opened the entire set, they would become invincible. This game was all about synergy and class. Cards were flying around. Kang Yu-sung acquired Steel Synergy. He had already received synergies, but the class had never done so before. But now, finally, he got a class where the synergy of darkness and the synergy of murder complement each other, enhancing the effects. When we get there, let's find some tower to test out the new features. The partners, a man and a cat, landed on the ground and looked at the sky, at the towers that hung next to each other. The guy was walking down the street and people started recognizing him. What was the hero king doing here? What had he forgotten? The guy walked into some kind of semi-basement room, blue light illuminating his face. There was a dark-haired guy sleeping on the table in this room, snoring into the tabletop. Have you seen the time? Yu-sung slammed his foot on the table, yelling at the guy. Wow, man, I have a terrible hangover. What's wrong with that asshole? The dark-haired man rubbed his forehead. The hero king said that he would count to 3 and that the man should follow him. Suddenly, a glass goblet flew past him and shattered a couple of centimeters from the guy's ear. How can someone like you order me around? Do you know who my father is? ONH company representative. Get it. Who are you talking to, asshole? Yusan grabbed him by the head and pulled his hair, calling him his father's youngest disappointment. The hero king walked out into the street with the young boy, shouting for the people around him to disperse. The guy took this order from the man, saying that he wanted to test new abilities, and this was just the thing that came up. A promising newcomer who woke up to this, the man said, taking off his glasses and looking forward. The guy was walking with a newbie. I can't believe that promising newbie is you. I heard you successfully cleared a level 3 tower. The newcomer was surprised. Tower? You're the hero king? I completely forgot. You're here to take me to Tower 4 for free, right? But the newbie was already wavering after the third-level tower. His personality and skills were not in line at all. However, the two of them entered the fourth-level tower, which was called the Butcher's Tower. While the newcomer was standing nearby in a less-than-perfect condition, Kang Yu-sung began to command them on what they should start with. He kicked the younger boy forward, ordering him to show what he could do. A huge man with carving knives in his hands and eyes burning with anger appeared in front of the guy. The newbie dodged the blow by jumping up with fear on his face. He shouted to the Hero King to help with something, but he only replied that he does not listen to the advice of those weaker than me. But if something happened to the newcomer, the Hero King would also get into trouble. He has a cool weapon, but he doesn't know how to use it. He still has a lot of learning to do. But those who don't know how to fight will meet a sad end. The guy just screamed and asked for help. Kang Yu-sung activated his shadow clone skill and rushed to the player's aid. He shouted that the best teacher is practice, and with one blow, Yu-sun killed several enemies at once. They were attacked by huge bats, which flew at the players with their teeth bared. Kang Yu-sung activated the blood magician technique this time. It was an ability that allowed the player to summon spirits that thirsted for blood. The guy asked again if it was time to change his pants, and the new guy threatened him with his father. I'm not being rude to you, I'm just giving extra motivation to succeed to a sweet puppy like you. You're not ready to hear the truth that you're a piece of crap and not a player. The guy crossed his arms. Kang Yu-sung activated another skill, surprising his younger partner. The dark mark was placed, and in an instant the magic killed the newcomer, spraying blood around him. The Hero King doesn't work with the likes of you. The boy extended his bloody hand upward. If you think this is unfair, you can always defeat me in battle. Bye-bye. They returned to real life, and the younger player knelt in pain before the Hero King. The boy didn't understand what was happening, where he was, and how he ended up there. I killed you less painfully. You still don't realize you're dead. The little one protested, shouting that his father would find out about this prank. Kang Yu-sung calmly agreed. The guy smiled sweetly and nodded that he would tell about it himself. It seems you don't realize how much trouble you're in. The newbie was very angry about this. The Hero King gave him the finger and asked, Will you hire a hitman for me? What will happen if the head of the ONH becomes my enemy? Another freak will line up to kill me. He pointed at the younger boy. Do you think you're special? Labyrinth Race. The new update for the Endless Labyrinth season is here. 999 player labyrinths, raid the labyrinth, emerge victorious, and get your rewards. Standing in the tower, Yu-sun thought that old age would take him sooner than this tower. Yu-sun walked at the head of 4 low-level players, the sword glowing in his hand. The blessing, Sixth Sense of the Mentor, was activated, and players used it to fight enemies. They made very good progress thanks to this blessing, and they advanced quickly. Standing with them was a first-level player who had just started playing. It is this division that should balance the teams in strength. It's no wonder they looked like easy prey. The other teams had war veterans. The Shadow Beast enveloped the younger players, while Yu-sung continued to fight the enemies. They were attacked by veteran players with weapons, who threatened violence as they fled. The Hero King rushed into battle, killing other players with his own hands. The wind was blowing very strongly, and because of this, the palm leaves were fluttering in the air in a wild dance. Another player ran up to his teammates shouting that he had found another team, and they all rushed into battle together, running headlong forward. One of them is dangerous. The rest are not a threat. Let's take out the strong one together first. Are we sure we're going in the right direction? It's a bit too dark. The warriors kept running forward, and above them hung the huge mouth of the Shadow Beast, which was about to slam it shut. The team left the game first, and immediately after it, the second one. Corpses lay on the floor, pierced by spikes of shadow magic. Another team was eliminated by ice magic, which was used by Kang Yu-sung. And it is in this simple way that the seasonal update, the first labyrinth. Achievement points were awarded to all team players, and this fact greatly amused the players. They had to choose a team player who would receive the awards, and in case of a disagreement, no one would receive the award. They give 2 tickets per team, not to each member? Yu-sun was very amused by this question. Well, I did all the work, so the reward is mine. Or does anyone disagree? Someone refused and said that they did not agree, and this made Kang Yu-sung very displeased and surprised. That first newbie objected, No, one ticket is mine, and then I will close my eyes to what happened in the tower. Another player chimed in. Idiot! You didn't lift a finger. At least I helped catch the monsters. The second ticket should be mine. The discussion turned into quite a heated argument, with one of the players shouting that enough was enough. The two main instigators of this dispute drew their swords, turning the dispute into a fight. Kang Yu-sung was very angry about this, and his blue eyes sparkled with hatred. A girl from the team asked us not to fight, and another player suggested playing Tsue Fa. Suddenly, these players, who had been arguing a second ago, fell dead on the floor. Kang Yu-sung frowned. Have some conscience. You already got achievement points without doing anything. Or do any of you think you deserve a second ticket more than I do? Low-level players immediately shook their heads, refusing the second ticket. And so it was Kang Yu-sung who now received 2 tickets, looking at them in his hands. The player opened random blessing tickets and the cards glowed in the air. The boy received fireproofing and a fair wind sail, but he had already had such blessings. The game suggested combining these features since the cards weren't new blessings. The more blessings, the better, even if they are not that good. In the end, the monk's blessings do not reset with each season, but remain with the players. So if you think about it, blessings are even more valuable than ability cards. The guy was wondering if he should go to the Fire Attributes Tower to practice his new blessings. Level 6 is the Phoenix's Nest. It wasn't a bad idea. Yusan asked the cat for her opinion. She replied that it would be better if they went somewhere dark and cool. The Holy War Tower summoned player Kim Yu-sung. The rank accessory traction sign had a powerful effect. The pendant in the player's hands lit up and rose upward, indicating whether he had accepted the request for a level 7 tower. The goal of the raid was to win, and it is important that there are creatures in the tower that can take part in the war. The guy accepted the tower's challenge and ended up in another world, landing on the red carpet in front of the throne. The girl on the throne crossed her arms. The shadow goddess has heard my prayers. It was a dark-haired elf, dressed in expensive fabrics and gold jewelry. The player remembered her. It was the same elf whom he saved from captivity, going against his assignment in the tower. That's exactly what he asked again, whether this was the princess he remembered. The spears stopped a centimeter away from him. The guards appealed to respect for the queen. She calmly stopped them. I am so indebted to this man that words cannot describe it, and now he has come to the rescue again. Hasn't he earned the status of an ally? The raid of the last tower ended with her coronation. The player asked again with a smile on her face if everything worked out. How can I be of service to you again, Your Highness? The guy was surprised. Was Syria really in danger again? After Urvano III suffered a stroke due to the information that Ayubum was captured by the Elven Kingdom, the new Pope, Gregory VIII, appealed to human kings. He appealed to the kings to unite and reclaim the sacred land. This led to a long, holy war between elves and humans. This information explained to Kang Yu-sung quite well the whole essence of what was happening. The kings of the 3 nations have gathered their armies, and their target is this fortress, because it is the closest to the sacred land. The Elf Queen asked the Hero King if he would fight for them in this war. The player looked out into the crowd. Is that the King of Evil over there by any chance? This surprised the princess greatly. Could he really have such good eyesight? Use the Pocket Workshop. Exchange the Oculus for an ice bolt. A firearm made of ice appeared in the warrior's hands. Ice bolt. 3 stars. Significant increase in range and damage. Possible projectile weapon projection. Kang Yu-sung stood on a huge rock and watched the army spread out below. The guy took his ice machine gun in his hand and calmly looked through the sight. He looked at the army in front of him through the sight and pointed the barrel at the warrior. And as soon as he chose a frag, he pulled the trigger and shot straight into the warrior's head. The army commander rode past on horseback and shouted to everyone to take out their shields. The shields glowed with a light flame, and now the player's bullets could not penetrate this protection. Yusan was wondering if these shields were blessed by the fire monk. As soon as he accepted the gift from the frost monk, he saw it everywhere. The army's warriors recognized the player, and now the second squad was ordered to find the guest. The boy jumped off the cliff head first, his cloak fluttering in the air. The elves went against the humans, defending their kingdom, and Yusan and the cat rushed into battle. The elves' arrows couldn't penetrate the magic shield, and the people wanted to unite their troops. The chief of the people refused. They first had to find the guest and then concentrate on the elves. No arrow could penetrate the helmets. It shouldn't have, but the elves still managed. It happened as the player predicted. The bows and arrows of the elves glowed with blue flames. People were afraid that someone else was fighting for the elves. Black tentacles were killing their warriors. The shadow beast turned into a huge whale, smearing enemies, scattering their corpses across the sand. Everything around was plunged into darkness. Only the waving of swords and the flying of arrows could be seen. The human kings did not plan to retreat even in such a situation. They only went forward. The king of malice, Richard, led his warriors into battle, proudly raising his sword. And while their squad ran forward, the silhouette of a black mouth was visible behind them. The whale's teeth snapped shut on the king and his minions, the shadow beast killing them all. But in the darkness, a red blade glowed, piercing the darkness and illuminating it with light. It was the king of evil who used his power to save his warriors. He dispelled the darkness around him by swinging his blade. The warriors ran only forward. The leader ordered to kill everyone, not to spare the elves and the guest. An elf ran past the player and called out to him, "Hey, guest! Just keep your eyes on the target." A crowd of mythical creatures from the storm behind the warrior jumped out at their targets, into the thick of things. Their eyes glowed with anger, and it was as if smoke of hatred was coming from their mouths. Kang Yusung looked at all this with a smile. "You're just a bunch of fanatics, aren't you?" The elves, like assassins, jumped on the human riders, cutting their throats with knives. A rather intense battle began. The elves cut down their opponents. There was no mercy for anyone. The hero king and the king of evil met each other's gazes, burning each other with their eyes. The human king ran towards the player, who calmly offered to fight him. Yusan swung his ice blade through the air, leaving behind blue streaks of shock waves. The king of evil intent called out to the player, called him a guest, and swung his sword. He was surprised how this upstart guest dared to attack him. The player was assisted by a shadow beast, and together they attacked their opponent. "You are an enemy for whose victory I will receive a reward. That is enough for me," Yusan admitted honestly. "Let's see if you really have the heart of a dragon." The player black-marked the enemy. Expose weaknesses was installed. The attack modifier, agility, and each dodge modifier were reduced by 500. The player jumped on top of the King of Evil, who was glowing with red magic. "Do you really think that a bug like you can defeat me?" The King of Evil intent struck the horse he was riding with his sword, and explosions began around him. "How did he do that? I'll give him a black mark." Yusan was shocked by his enemy's actions. The blood from the dead animal's body rose into the air as if nothing had happened. The king of evil intent sacrificed this blood. He asked to be given the strength to defeat this pagan. The king was angry with the enemy. But the player was not discouraged. He opened the vault and decided to replace the ice bolt with a sword. And it was after this that the hero king and the king of evil intent began to fight, trying to inflict as much damage on each other as possible. Due to the fact that there was so much blood around the opponents, the bloody grip was stronger than usual. Kang Yusung knelt down on one knee, spreading his arms out to the sides. "This creates the perfect conditions for..." The guy increased the range of his skill, and a huge dome of ice magic appeared around him. With the help of this dome, he made all the corpses around him rise to their feet. The King of Evil stepped forward and said menacingly, "You can't stop me with such cheap ones." It was the ability to resurrect the dead and completely subjugate them. Corpses could change for battle, but the radius was too wide to use necromantic abilities. The skill, Walking Dead, has ceased to function. Kang Yusung pointed an ice sword at the enemy. Immediately after, Yusan held in his hands a box containing the head of the King of Evil, Richard. The Elven Queen said, "We are eternally grateful for your service, guest, but only one of the three kings has been defeated." The girl meant that the holy war had only just begun, and the guest would have to stay here for a long time. The guy sat next to the open window and looked at the cloudless night sky, the wind fluttering his hair. He rubbed his still bloody fingers, thinking about something of his own. The guy stood up and walked forward when a green light appeared behind him. It was the merchant again. She was sitting on her knees and called out to the player, whom she had already had enough of. "You have reached the highest level of the ice sword crafting skill. If you upgrade the shop, you can buy an awakening stone." Kang Yusung smiled warmly at the girl. I was worried that you wouldn't show up at all. The shop was upgraded, and an awakening stone was purchased. The experience points gained awaken the skill Ice Sword Creation. Kang Yu-sung used his Frost Smith ability, which controlled cold magic. He used his attributes and cards to fight against the enemies that surrounded him from all sides. The guy shouted, "What a beautiful day to die!" And his opponents realized he was too strong. "By the way, your captain must be such a fat woman." The player smiled sarcastically, using barbs. His army was suffering defeat. The warriors were frozen thanks to Yusan's magic and died one by one. "Your captain didn't bother to lift his ass, it must be that heavy." The queen said to her guest, "We have received news that Bloodbeard Barbarossa placed his troops here and there." The player assumed that the spies were elves, but this was not the case. Kang Yu-sung was surprised. Could the spy really be a human? The three kings who participated in the Holy War never got along, and they were still at odds, whether the denunciation was true or not. But this already gave the elves a chance. Bloodybeard Barbarossa was the most powerful of the three kings. The queen sent her best warriors. But the original plan was for the player to kill him silently, which made him a little angry. The information seemed to be true, but the main goal of this battle was nowhere to be seen. The guest of this world stepped inside the hut, the ice scattering under his feet. He saw the enemy. "Oh, there you are! Are you hiding? Such a big man! A coward?" With a loud, distinctive sound, the king's body fell to the floor, and a mug of ale spilled nearby. Kang Yu-sung looked at this picture with disdain through his hair that fell over his eyes. He stepped over a mug of steaming drink lying on the floor, assuming it contained poison. Elves ran up behind him to tell him that everything was clear outside and all the enemies were defeated. The elf was surprised that the king was already dead, and Yusan had the idea that the Holy War was a lie. The real enemy was right in front of them. From day one of Season 1, they did only one thing: forced nations to fight each other by sending assassins to eliminate the best players. All this time, they were pursuing only their own interests. Yu-sung, enraged by this realization, stepped on the glass that was lying on the floor, breaking it. He couldn't believe it. It was all some kind of nonsense. The guy frowned and looked around. Was he poisoned by one of his own? Was the information leaked for someone else? Well, with our battle, we simply gave someone confidence in Barbossa's death. Yusan shrugged his hands. They are capable of this precisely because of the Holy War. They gained their glory and set three nations at odds. One way or another, they will have to fight the High King. Yusan refused. No, the remaining army will not go back. In addition, the troops were disbanded and most likely joined the other side. The war continued. People wanted to kill the pagans, ordered them to be destroyed in the name of the God of Light. Yusan was upset by the identical slogans, as if they were carbon copies. Is it really possible to establish peace through violence? He turned back, scanning the battalions of warriors with his eyes. They lined up in rows next to each other. The guy thought about trying the effect of the west wind, which would allow the battle to proceed smoothly. He activated the card. The boost was supposed to last until the end of the battle. Using ice magic again, Yusan sent a light frost throughout the army, which turned into a storm. The human soldiers shouted, "Here he is! The very same elven assassin! We must avenge his highness!" They did not want to lose to the ignoramuses, as they called the elves, and at the back of the army stood a rider on a white horse. This rider held a sword that glowed with scarlet flames and asked the God of Light to guide them. The monarch of Light blessed the human army, and winged creatures began to descend from him again. The warriors of Light joined the battle. The commander confidently ran forward on horseback, his sword sparkling with fire. The fire monarch blessed the human army, and the fire destroyers joined the battle. The shadow monarch blessed the army of desert elves, which made them very happy, and they shot at their enemies with bows. Also, on the side of the elves, the Shadow Council joined. The Shadow Council joined the terrible battle. The Frost Monarch blessed the army of elves, and the Ice Guardians also joined the battle. If this battle is what the gods desire, Yusan began to speak, looking at what was happening. Explosions flew in all directions, and bullets of shadow magic hit the sacred shields. If the gods truly craved such violence and hatred, doesn't that make them evil gods? The small cat next to Yusung's feet growled, "Shut up and do what you're paid to do." She was right. And that is why, having activated his ice sword, the player rushed into a new battle. The war had to end today. Kang Yu-sung couldn't let the shadow government down. The Shadow Council rewarded him with 100 shadow puppets to help him in this dangerous moment. The warrior jumped on one of these dolls, thereby helping himself to reach the desired point. The light warrior faction, 59th level angels, were the same as last time. The shadow puppets were supposed to take care of the angels, and it was very easy to deal with them. The guy looked forward and smiled brightly. Could it really be his opponent? A guy with long brown hair and huge white wings holding a sword. She used this weapon to attack Yuson, who dodged, exposing the doll to the blow instead of himself. The character wore a long cloak with gold patterns on the sleeves and collar. Yuson noticed exactly this. In front of him was a player, a real person. "Stupid pagan! Is this what everyone calls a guest?" The enemy shouted at the Hero King. This is what prompted the player to think that he was the only guest here. That is, this was not a real person in front of him. In the name of the God of Light and King Philip II and Supreme King, you will not escape. This guy was a real religious fanatic, and he even put gods and people on the same level. This game just can't get any worse. Everyone has wings on their backs, the guy commented discontentedly. And immediately after these words, the guy was blessed by the Shadow Monarch. He awarded him with raven wings. Behind the player, huge wings burst from his back, as if created from shadows. They made him look like a crow. I didn't mean I needed wings too, but it's like a fashion accessory for the game, thanks. Fighting in the air like this with wings, Yuson's plan was now just a useless piece of paper. Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary, the boy with white wings shouted. They started a fight, the two of them fighting in the air, their white and black wings flapping in the air. It seems you're tired already. This is your punishment for betraying the God of Light. Kang Yu-sung asked if the character was living as the gods wanted. Did the gods really want him to poison the bloody beard? So much hatred. While the player was distracting him with his questions, small ice daggers were getting closer and closer to his face. The guy with white wings called it a cheap trick and smashed all the blades with one swing. Of course the gods wanted it. I am a god-blessed seraph, he waved his sword. Kang Yu-sung's attack was blocked by the seraph shield, and then the seraph shield blocked the attack again. But the very next second, thanks to the main player's trick, the Seraph's shield was destroyed. Yuson thrust his sword into the boy's back. I knew it wasn't just me who was unhappy with the wings. They were limiting my field of vision. Suddenly, the 8th level Seraph moved into the body of the Supreme King. It lit up. Rays of bright light blinded Yuson, who flew away with the help of his wings. Seraphim grew second wings, slightly lower than the previous ones, and a halo appeared above his head. The player was surprised, but also slightly horrified. Wow, can angels really do that? The fire destroyers forged the sword of light in hellfire. It was in the hands of the seraphim. The ice guardians forged an ice sword in the cold Kokit River, and this weapon glowed in Kang Yu-son's hands. And with the improved swords, the character and the player went back into battle. People continuing the war on the sand looked with horror at what was happening in the sky. The drops flew down, a heavy downpour and storm began, as if the gods were angry at all this. The player felt his opponent's sword cut through a huge, dark wing. But suddenly thorns emerged from the other wing. Dark needles pierced the seraph through and through. Yuson's throat hurt from screaming, and he noted that at this rate he would probably lose his voice. The guy stood on his ice sword hanging in the sky. He killed the High King, the body of the Archangel. It's a shame to say this, but I don't need wings to fight on the ground, the guy noted with displeasure. That's why the guy threw back his wings. People looked at the angel that fell from the clouds onto the sand. The course of history was changed. All the seraphim and angels fell down as corpses. History should have remembered the legendary cloak of the player, the guest, who saved them from the war. The player also received a special achievement. He received damaged equipment. About 10 information boards appeared in front of Kang Yu-sung, and he also earned 100,000 achievement points. Finally, it was over. Yuson was covered in blood and looked at the sky from which huge raindrops were falling. Breaking news! The Hero King has successfully raided the first Tier 7 tower of the season. The guy went into the tower next to his house but came out in the wrong place, with journalists standing nearby. The cross has disappeared from the design of your cloak. Did you change your cloak inside the tower? The boy was angered by the interrogations. You've been raiding towers more intensely than ever before this season. As a player, how would you comment on your exploits? Mr. Pak Tae-shik ran up, annoyed. Damn it, we're too late. This thing must be reloading. Yusan has already given an interview. You like heroic deeds. You like writing sensational articles. And to be honest, sometimes I don't understand why I have to bust my ass to save the world. Oh, something just got to me during the speech. Would you like to listen some more? The journalists waved eagerly. With a half-maniacal smile on his face, the guy asked into the microphone, How do you feel about the war? To have molten iron pouring down on you while you climb the castle walls. To be hit by arrows. To have your guts spill out when you are slashed with a sword. Oh yes, that's right. We are now in the 21st century. In that case, as befits the 21st century, let's start with rockets falling from the sky. Even though we're in the 21st century, our guts are still spilling out. How do you feel about war? The guy asked his audience. The interviewers and journalists shouted, Highly negative! There's not a single person who would like this. Whether the war ends in victory or defeat, people will still die. Yusan remembered the Elf Queen's words. I'm happy we're avenged, but at the same time I'm scared to death. He was surprised and then answered the girl, Your people have won. What can you fear? She cynically replied, glass in hand, I'm afraid of the end of this war. I'm afraid of blood and death. Is this whole terrifying scene of deaths really what our goddess wanted from us? The guy spoke into the microphone. No person in their right mind would enjoy war. How do you feel about heroes? They looked down in surprise. Heroes? Of course, everyone likes heroes. To this answer, the player only calmly asked, How do journalists think people become heroes? Killing enemies and showing good results in war. That's it. Without war, there would be no heroes. So how do you feel about war again? Let's be honest with each other. You like wars. The player's words shocked the audience. This is a very provocative statement. The current situation is simply a relic of the past, said journalists. A relic of the past? Even now, our neighbors to the left, right, and above send assassins after me with each passing season. This is also a war. Espionage is also considered part of the war. One man shouted, Wait, are you saying that other countries have tried to assassinate you? You didn't know? Oh wait, that's classified information. My mouth is shut. As Yusung continued talking, the phone in his pants was ringing off the hook. That's why I immediately remembered this as soon as I started talking about the war. Even if the world collapsed tomorrow, people would still be at each other's throats today. States even want to send their best players to the front lines, using us as weapons in war. They told me to draw my sword, but not before the enemy of the whole world, but before the enemy of the country. It seems like even without my intervention, the season will be just great. While the boy was giving his speech about saving the world, his powers caused a blast of ice and snow. Why do I have to go through all this? To save the world? I mean, why? Is this world worth saving? All of this was recorded on the screen and broadcast on air. It deserves it. If only because we can't let innocent people suffer. Yes, it would be irresponsible of you to stop being a player. Behind the boy, his shadow spoke. You will either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. I'm just saying, don't take words so seriously. Someone from the crowd called out to Yusan. He was pulled down from his pedestal by the hand. The guy looked at this man a little frightened. It was Mr. Pak Tae-shik. He ordered his younger friend to get down from there, and taking him by the arm, showing the crowd his badge, he shouted for everyone to disperse and get out of the way. People watch and don't talk any more bullshit about a player's debt or what responsibility a player has. Because if you piss off an arrogant bastard like me, he won't take responsibility for all the mess in the world. I hope you wrote it down. Kang Yu-sung sat in the car and continued his monologue from there. The clown monk expressed his satisfaction, and the war monk, delighted, blessed him with the god of war. The elder said that he was going home now, so Yusan would have to deal with all this on his own. The monk of the alternate reality entered a berserk state and blessed the player with the legendary item Amulet of Enemy Finding. This item gave the code word snitch to the enemy during combat. The worst part is that it was only audible to the one wearing it. Following the revelation of terrorist threats faced by the heroic king from other countries, discontent with the regime. Pak Tae-shik had just gotten out of the shower. With a towel over his shoulder and wearing a white t-shirt, he opened a bottle of beer. He turned off the news on Yoo-sung's phone. "Why are you listening to this? First you caused such a fuss, and now you're afraid." The guy answered calmly, saying that he thought the older man would get angry, but he asked, "How could I? How can I be angry with you now that I know what you're going through? Is there anyone closer to you than me?" The younger one lowered his head with a slight smile on his face, thinking about how to answer him. "I have a saint in France." Takashik was indignant. "Hey, she's as far away from me as the moon is from me. We have a special connection." Yusan thanked the elder, who replied, "Well, at least you understand that you should be grateful. What's your class? So you've awakened. Do you have some kind of special suit now?" Pak Tae-shik activated his suit. "Heartbreaker, this is the legendary weapon of the assassins. I heard you got the legendary gear too." Yoo-sung rubbed the back of his head, agreeing that he had succeeded. "You should at least take a break sometimes. Working yourself to the point of exhaustion has never helped anyone. Would you like to take a stroll?" There was one nice tower of the 7th level. It was the Godfather's Tower. Secret organizations and civil strife awaited there. The two of them, Park Tae-shik and Kang Yoo-sung, entered this very tower, and a board with information was glowing in front of them. "We are faced with betrayals, secret feuds, and unrivaled organizational abominations." Yusan smiled, sarcastically remarking, "In that case, we'd better change the genre to noir." The entrance to the Godfather's Tower was made, and inside it, in the darkness of the streets, a terrible rain raged. There was a short-haired blonde handing something to a person in the building. She was ordering him to sort something out before their next meeting. After this, the girl turned around and they both said in unison, "In the name of justice." Having moved a little further, the girl picked up the watch on the chain and noticed with annoyance that it had stopped. Her godfather gave them to her. The light of the lantern illuminated the silhouette. The girl thought sadly about the rain. In front of her walked Park Tae-shik and Kang Yoo-sung, the latter saying that she needed to put on a hood or all her hair would fall out. The girl approached the guys. "Sir, please help us. This is the city of Black York, and the Capone family is in crisis." They replied that they were here to fix it. The blonde replied, "Then come with me. I'll take you to the boss." As they walked, led by a short-haired lady, she explained about the city. This city is run by 5 prestigious families in the criminal underworld, and a meeting between the businessmen is scheduled in 4 days. But not long ago, our godfather and former head of the Kapnu family, as well as his close associates, were brutally murdered. We lost a lot of valuable people, you see. I was an orphan. I was picked up from the streets when I was still a child. I was lucky that my abilities awakened, but it was of little use. My life only got better when my godfather adopted me. He is my savior. Some table appeared before Pak Tae-shik, and while he was reading it, Yoo-sung chuckled thoughtfully. They continued on their way, the blonde walking slightly ahead of the guys. "On the day of the attack, I only managed to save one person, the Godfather's son. He's now the acting boss. Sir, I am the head of Capone's enterprise here." In front of them hung a huge portrait of a man with a cigar in his teeth. 2 players and a girl stood in the office. At the head of the room stood a high chair on wheels, from which the monologue was being delivered. Mr. Park Tae-shik snapped his fingers. "Boss baby, is that you?" He pointed at the chair. "Don't call me that. I'm nothing like him. How dare you say that to the face of Capone's boss?" The girl came forward, smiling warmly and apologizing for the guys. She said that the boss's mere presence commands respect. "Ahem. That's right, we don't have much time. Let's get straight to the point, Rebecca, please." Rebecca, the young blonde who found the players, nodded her head in agreement with her boss. "In short, our main and fundamental goal is to restore the Capone family to its former glory and dignity. We must generate the greatest interest at the upcoming 4-day meeting among the leaders of the 5 families, and find those responsible for the murder of the Godfather and our best personnel." The girl outlined their goals. Yusan asked about the suspects and was told, "Any of the other 4 families, or someone close to them." In Gambino's crosshairs, he is currently in a precarious position and more war-prone than anyone else. Player Kang Yoo-sung picked up the photographs of the heads of families and began to examine the characters with interest. He put all the papers on the table and suggested his solution. "Maybe we should kill them all." The blonde girl replied, "That's a good idea. We can get rid of all the potential enemies of the family this way. But it seems the head of the family didn't like this idea at all, and Kang Yusan noticed this and voiced it. No! The Capones have always been a great family. They became influential under my father. The guy waved his hands. I now have Rebecca, who has observed her father's strategy for the last 20 years. Her methods are the very essence of the Capone family. I think she's right in everything she says. Yusan said that he was the leader of the family, not Rebecca. But he refused, saying that the girl had more experience than him. But frankly, it seems to me that if they are not involved, then it is better to maintain our business relationship. The boy, who was the head of Capone, looked nervously and fearfully at the girl next to him. Can we leave it like this? She smiled widely and nodded. Of course we can. You're too soft, boss. They left the room and said, let's just kill the Colio family for now. They're the closest ones from here. Kang Yu-sung laughed at his friend. Ha! Come on! You're sounding just like a villain right now. To find a villain, you have to think like one. After all life is just a game. The partners, Junior and Senior, activated their weapons and suits. You choose your own role. Who's there? Who dared to enter the Colio family's territory? The men in black with pistols looked up, and ignoring the shots and resistance, Kang Yu-sung and Mr. Pak Tae-shik began to slaughter the people. Surrender while you can. I will spare those who will not resist us. The elder looked slyly ahead. You think we're not ready to die for Colio? Get the hell out of here, you bastards! The men continued to shoot back. Because of this answer, Pak Tae-shik rushed into battle with renewed vigor. Shots and knife blows flashed everywhere. Yusan fought back with his ice sword and shouted, just look at him, how excited he is! Dirty bastards! Did they attack us on purpose before the meeting? More people burst into the building with machine guns at the ready. When asked if this was the boss of the Thashiku family, the answer was, ha! Our boss would never stoop so low as to fight someone like you. The gentleman threw this boy into a group of new fighters. He asked Kang Yu-sung to deal with them himself. You came here to relax, remember, so let me handle this. The player found this very amusing and agreed, okay, then let me clear the way for you. Yu-sung used his ice power and cleared a path for his older partner. A crowd of crows sat on the slough, and a man with huge crow wings flew up from there. This frightened Thashik, who noticed some unnaturally huge bird in the window. And Kang Yu-sung had this bad feeling, as if everything that happened was not the end. Huge crows flew over the roofs of high-rise buildings, cawing loudly and fluttering their wings. In the last chapter, the Colio family was out of the game. Now the current target is the Gambino family. Someone shouted, oh my God, he's gonna ram us! He's gonna turn everything upside down if he keeps this up! What is he doing? I haven't seen him on the battlefield in a long time. It's just unbelievable. Yusan looked up. Well, I don't want to show my cruel side either. We're very similar in that way. Yusan held his shadow beast in his hands and ordered it to work, because it was here to rest. After all this cruelty, the guys were sitting in a local burger joint next to the high-rises. Oink, oink, pig, you've been eating cheeseburgers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all the time we've been here. Aren't you tired of it? Nope. The local burgers are top-notch. While I'm here, I really want to enjoy this delicacy. I rarely get any rest anyway, and I don't want to stress out about choosing a restaurant. But it was time to get back to business. So Yusan asked again how things were going with the Gambinos, the mafia family. Their boss said he didn't know what was going on. The player took a sip of his burger and chuckled at this answer. You asked me to trust you, but you give me such vague answers. A middle-aged blonde man with long hair sat with a telephone receiver in his hands, the smoke around him beautifully spreading through the air. He dialed numbers on a landline phone, using his fingers to scroll through the dial with holes in it. No answer. Neither Sanchez nor Falcone. His bloodied lips clamped around a large cigar. Why the hell is no one answering? Don't tell me Capone was killed by his own hands. The man coughed, blood spurted from his mouth, and the liquid landed directly on his large, dirty palms. Just look at me. This is all because of these freaks. He looked at his hands, dissatisfied. In 72 hours, the blood flow in his heart would have stopped, and then his heart itself. However, Pak Tae-shik, who was looking at the half-dead man, could stop this action and help him. The player looked at him playfully, smiling and asking him again if the man understood these words. Yes, the Gambino family will miss this meeting, We are ready to cooperate in finding the person responsible for the death of Capone Sr. Pak Tae-shik nodded and poked the man in the forehead with his finger. He's a smart guy, so don't screw up. The player turned on his heel and walked away from the man, stepping over dead bodies on the floor. Kang Yu-song, sitting in front of his master, his mentor, and simply a good friend, commented, "We were left with nothing." "Stop chewing ice, it's very bad for your teeth." The older one ruffled his friend's hair, advising him. "We will definitely find out more information at the meeting." They turned around, looking somewhere to the side. "Also, this is just a guess, but I think there are others besides the 5 families." A flock of crows sat near a tall building with an incredibly beautiful sunset in the background, chatting noisily. One after another, guys in tuxedos and military men with machine guns at the ready emerged from long, black-tinted cars. In the building afterward, under the dim light of a lantern, sat the heads of families. Powerful, but a little battered by life. Marcellus Collio, head of the Collio family, sat with his face bandaged. "It's already quite late." The Gambino family boss nodded but refused. "But 2 are still missing." The young boss growled in anger. "Falcone, Sanchez, they killed my father! I knew it was them!" Rebecca came up behind him and quietly advised him not to jump to conclusions, but to just observe first. Someone ran into the building shouting, "Boss, you need to know something! It's really urgent!" The players sat in the same room but at a different table, and calmly watched the surprise of the head of someone's family. This important information turned out to be the information that the heads of Falcone and Sanchez were killed. Yuson, holding a burger in his hand, quietly remarked, "So we have a different enemy. Now it's clear why families look weakened. Of course you looked puzzled all this time. Something distracted the heads of state and simply important people, their assistants. They all looked up at once. Under the light of the central lamp, the face of an unknown person appeared. He was wearing a black robe and a long cloak. "How convenient that everyone who denigrates this city has gathered in one place," the mysterious man commented. "You are associating with corrupt politicians, manipulating the union, and robbing poor citizens. You lie and smuggle. You are despicable criminals who only sow chaos around you. Here are your merits." The man waved his hand, and a flock of crows, black as night, flew around the room. "My name is Night Raven, and you will get what you deserve." The guy introduced himself to his audience. The people standing below, between the tables, looked up and saw birds flying down at them like eagles. The young boss of the Capone family was indignant. "Night Raven! So it was you who killed the other 2 bosses." "That's right, they were scoundrels for whom even death was too low a price. I killed your father too. And soon you will meet him." The guy raised his hand and raised his huge black raven wings. And with a cry of, "Criminal!" the newly minted Robin Hood rushed into battle, feathers and bullets flying past him. Rebecca jumped forward in front of her boss and put up a shield in front of them. It was too dangerous. The Night Raven extended his bony hand forward, squeezing his fingers slightly. "Rebecca, he killed our father!" The girl calmly replied that she knew about it and nothing more. She stood in the rain, speaking in the name of justice to someone at the door, her eyes glinting in the dim light. Night Raven rushed into battle. He cursed at the little boss and ran straight at him to kill him. He was administering justice, and Kang Yu-sung responded to him in a fight. "A son is not responsible for his father. It is not for you to decide." The guy used his ice power and shadow beast ability to draw the enemy's attention to himself. "So all this time you were the main villain." Yuson picked up a pen and looked forward with a smirk. The Night Raven deftly dodged the Shadow Beast's claws, aided by the huge wings on its back. The guy in the bird mask with red eyes roared in anger, deftly dodging the player's blows. One such time, in a successful attempt to dodge, he swung his leg, cutting the air with the blade on his boot. "He's clever. I'll try this then." The little shadow creature warned the player to be careful. Kang Yu-sung moved closer to his enemy and lifted his finger to lift his raven mask. And with a characteristic sound, he poked his opponent with his finger, smiling pleased with this success. The black mark was placed and the application of weakness detection to the target began. Hit, dexterity, and evasion modifiers will be reduced by 1,000 each when using the code word snitch. The Enemy Finder Amulet Storyteller provided detailed information about the detected target's stats. It also allowed for a single cast of Reveal Weakness. Dark energy comes from the Dark Raven's cloak and sharp feathers. Beware of the feathers, and he has a lot of explosives. Kang Yu-sung watched as the Dark Raven hit the boy's body with a loud thud. "Oh, so we're dealing with a suicide bomber," the player sadly remarked, looking at the enemy. "You can weaken your opponent. What are you doing, sir?" "Well, I'm dealing with, sir," the Dark Raven whistled. And it was precisely because of this loud whistle that all the crows that were in this large room began to have their eyes lit up with a red light. And then all the little birds exploded with a roar, causing a wave of shock throughout the room. Warriors, guards, protecting important people began to run from the explosions around them to save themselves. They also tried to continue their work, turning on the shields around the bosses, while the players dealt with the crows. Mr. Pak the Shik fought off the crows and explosions. "Damn it! There are too many of them!" He suggested to his younger partner that they switch tasks, as he was a master in one-on-one combat. "The bosses are all yours. This is our hero, and you need to protect the boss. Understand?" Yusan spoke loudly. He also said that the elder one was better suited for the role of security. The latter did not agree to any, for murder is the element of Kang Yu-sung, the hero king. His eyes flashed with blue flames. The boy swung his sword and struck the Night Raven with it, leaving a shock line of light behind him. "Hey, sir! You're supposed to be saving the world! Why are you acting like the devil's advocate?" the enemy howled. While they continued fighting, Yusan asked again what it was like to save the world. What it even meant. "I don't know what they told you, but their rotten little souls just fooled you. They're a bunch of thugs who killed my family, the Capones. And then they left the courtroom innocent, simply because they have huge connections and money. They couldn't be left unpunished," the Dark Raven tried to shout to the players with his thoughts. "This city is rotten. That's why I'm the one fighting for justice, for fairness." Kang Yu-sung looked at his opponent and stupidly rolled his eyes as he listened to his monologue. "It's not too late to restore justice," the Night Raven pleaded with the player standing in front of him. And while he pleaded to stand on his side, the thorns of dark magic pierced him from the inside. It was Kang Yu-sung who was tired of listening to this boring conversation and used his Shadow Beast ability. The player hissed and said that the mask didn't suit the character and came closer and tore a piece of plastic off the other person's face. The guy looked at the enemy in front of him and was horrified by what he saw. His eyes narrowed in shock. There was a little boy kneeling in front of the player, a child who was crying in pain. He looked crazy. He was shouting about justice and how it should prevail. The boy was holding a small button in his hand, and with great force he pressed on it, seriously frightening the player. "What have you done?" "Rebecca told me about the meeting 3 days ago. How much explosives do you think we managed to plant?" A huge explosion sounded. Kilograms of explosives in the room exploded all at once. Mr. Pak Tae-shik managed to run up to his younger partner, and a shadow beast appeared behind them. The huge black cat took Park Tae-shik into its mouth and grabbed Kang Yu-sung with its teeth to help them escape. Players and 2 members of the Capone family navigated the city at night with the help of a huge animal. And the crows that were sitting on the buildings nearby watched as the windows from the top of the tallest one were blown out by the explosion. It started raining again in the city, as if the clouds were mourning all the victims and murders that had happened recently. Rebecca stood in front of the 2 players, thanking them for their loyalty and help. "Thanks to you, most of the businessmen at the meeting. In general, the Capone family is back on top, and your young boss survived. Just as you wanted, victory is yours." Kang Yu-sung nodded in confirmation. Everything was correct, so the player's work was finished. But the younger player was still not satisfied with something. "But it seems like you set this all up, didn't you?" Kang Yu-sung's ice swords pointed at the girl in front of him. She continued to stand calmly, not paying attention to the fact that the swords were shining in front of her. What did the players care? "Well, I was hired to eliminate the enemies of the Capone family," the hero king shrugged, sighing ironically. "And it was you who had a hand in the murder of the head of the family, even persuading the Night Raven to kill all the leaders. And it was the Night Raven who gave you away. You gave him the information." Yusan raised his feather in the air. The guy gave the pen to the player, saying that with this, the traitor would also go to the next world. "You eliminated the rival families and installed your puppet as Capone's boss. and you became the woman who practically ruled Black York. And all this makes you just as much an enemy as Capone. The player, the hero king, concluded his monologue. No, it was all just for Mr. Vito. The girl smiled softly, looking down. Vito was too kind, naive and innocent little boy, so said Rebecca. I eliminated the godfather who wanted to make Vito his successor and all external enemies who posed a threat. I only did what is expected of the head of security, to protect him from this harsh world. You stabbed the man who picked you up and raised you in the back. Yu-sung continued to argue. You put your puppet in the boss's place. You only thought about your own safety, and that's all. It's because of you that Vito is a completely dependent person. You only thought about yourself. The girl giggled nervously, denying everything that had been said. Sir, you don't know me at all. Mr. Pak Tae-shik nodded, suggesting they ask Vito, who was standing right behind them all, listening intently. Rebecca was scared. She looked at the boy in shock and called out to him in horror. Mr. Vito stood in the shadows, streams of tears streaming down his cheeks, running down his chin and falling onto the floor. He began to use his power. Rebecca's body rose up as she continued to deny everything she had said. His fist glowed with red magic, and in his other hand his finger was on the trigger of a pistol that was pointed at the girl. The goal of the raid: to revive the Capone family, eliminate the family's enemies, and gain privileges at the meeting. Everything was accomplished. The players left the tower. Phew! I just wanted to be a detective in a black and white movie. And while Mr. Park Tae-shik was inviting Kang Yu-sung to hang out, a worker would run up to him from behind from time to time. It was some very urgent and important news, the girl started saying. The 5th-level tower in the center of Seoul. This tower was on the verge of collapse, which is what really scared the two partners who were standing nearby. The level 5 tower just mentioned was raided by players from the association. They failed the first raid and retreated. Someone was shouting at each other very loudly. We got 3 penalty points for failing the raid. This will lower everyone's level. The boy, who was shouted at with such words, spoke fearfully about how they could fix everything. He was talking about how they could do a high-difficulty raid and fix it that way. We've been through so much to just give up. You want to go back to the bottom and become a slave to the association. That's why they had to compensate for these penalty points in any way possible. A high-difficulty raid is our only chance, the player shouted at the other. After that, they decided to organize a high-difficulty raid and were, of course, completely destroyed. Yusan sat in the car. I knew the association's merit points and demerit points system was cruel. It shouldn't have been like this. Yusan, the hero king, sat on the seat looking down sadly. This is rare these days, but during the first and second seasons, this disaster went by quite easily. At that time, proper rating techniques had not yet been developed, and failures were absolutely commonplace. The solution, however, was not easy to find. Many people, the player, died long before this. Kang Yu-sung himself lost loved ones both before and after becoming a player. The players were driving in a red car. The flashing lights on the roof were blaring along with the siren, and the car was picking up speed. Everything was different now. Yusan asked to unlock unassembled equipment and skill sets. The enemy finder amulet, wind bracelet, and power ring were already equipped on the player. Information about the player's abilities, amulets, and attributes appeared on the sign in front of him. Kang Yu-sung couldn't allow anything that could compromise him, so he exchanged the wind bracelet for a Shimoro bracelet. In the same way, he changed the bloody target to Charlotte's Web, moving the cards between each other. The tower hack was approaching. It was necessary to prepare for the invasion of monsters, and the players arrived at the place. The younger boy got out of the car to a loud shout. Someone recognized him. It's the Hero King! He looked up, skeptically taking in the surroundings, his face illuminated by the purple light. People were happy to see the first player in front of them. A storm, explosions, and chaos raged above them. Something huge flashed in the sky, the red light blinding all the soldiers and players standing below. The countdown to the tower breach began. All the warriors began to prepare, fear gleaming in their eyes. A hand fell on one of the players' shoulders as the countdown rang out loudly above them. 8, 7, 6. Anyone who fits one of the following 3 criteria. Get up and run from here. Kang Yu-sung raised his hand with one finger, voicing his criteria. those who capture the shadow of my skill. The second criterion was, those who can't keep up with me. The player raised 2 fingers up. And while the player was voicing the third criterion, shadow spikes grew in front of him, and the countdown came to an end. And the third criterion was, anyone who wasn't Kang Yu-sung. The player smiled wryly at his thoughts. Monsters burst out of the tower with a loud bang. Flying dragons, some of them were just skeletons. Centaurs, snakes, and dragons ran towards the people. Players and warriors ran away in fear from all this. Shadow spikes as sharp as swords, as well as light from ice blades, flew through the air, killing monsters. This place is teeming with all kinds of monsters. There are orcs and reptilians. Kang Yu-sung was surprised by what was happening. There was even something that the player didn't know what to call. He killed the monster one by one using his powers. But judging by the name of the tower, the enemies the players fought must have been people from the kingdom. This means that the monsters that escape from the tower have nothing to do with the tower that is being raided. So where did all these monsters come from? And such diverse monsters too. Watch the Hero King tackle a high-difficulty tower hack solo. Although he is a rather controversial figure, his skills are excellent and unique. The Abyss Monk awoke darkness from the deepest places because it was much more fun that way. Incredible! The gate is changing color. This ominous hue must herald the arrival of an abyssal monster. How can an abyssal monster appear at the gate of the 5th level tower? Yu-sung shouted, "Isn't your attention delightful? Get lost before I feed you to that monster!" Yu-sung jumped across the ice ledges. The monk is acting on his own. Incredible! And with a huge, loud explosion, the abyssal monster appeared. It crawled out of the gate of the 5th level tower. This really excited Kang Yu-sung. He was waiting for this moment, waiting for a terrible monster. The shadow around him turned into huge claws. They crashed into the monster, releasing pools of blood. The player raised his hand up, shouting into the air, "I will dismember you with one move!" Ice peaks burst from the ground like huge spikes, shrouded in darkness, and rose into the air in columns. Kang Yu-sung crossed his palms and calmly looked forward. He used his skill, Charlotte's Web. This skill allowed one to send a web of threads throughout the air. It would intertwine and shine beautifully. The effect connected 2 points with a thread of death, which had incredible cutting ability. Symbiosis with the skill of killing. It was with the help of Charlotte's thread that the player defeated the abyssal monster that emerged from the 5th level tower. The Abyss Monk blessed him with the Abyss Stone to express his satisfaction. The tower hack was completed. Kang Yu-sung picked up a small crystal. It glowed red in his hands like blood. The reporters came running. "Breaking news! Tower hack and the king is a hero!" The player then stood in place in front of reporters with his little shadow animal by his side. This news was immediately posted on the players' forum. Watch King Hero and Tower break online. The Players Association is simply hopeless, I tell you, to be honest. Is there even one in this country? Apparently, the deceased players failed to storm the tower and were afraid of penalty points from the association. Following this statement by the Hero King, reporters asked a couple of questions to the association's official representative. Yu-sung watched the news with Park Tae-shik, and they were surprised that maybe something would change this time. "You're right. We must not miss this chance to cleanse the association of rot." The gentleman snapped his finger. Yu-sung asked again if he was running for president, causing a strong reaction. "The law doesn't allow this now. What do you want from me? One nation, one guild, nothing but an association." "I know, and that's why I want to take the chance to change it, with all the troubles that have been there so far. We must take advantage of the fact that there is not a single player among the association's leaders. These people have never been in the tower. Besides, they only promote those who have support and neglect the rest. Stop putting up with this." Yu-sung wished his friend a flag, and he replied, "You're acting like it doesn't apply to you at all." He agreed that he wouldn't be involved, but he heard the following. "It's you who will be organizing the guild, not me." "Still me? No, no way!" Kang Yu-sung jumped up from his seat, breaking into a scream. He couldn't do that. A petition for permission to form a guild of domestic players has garnered 170,000 signatures overnight. As for public opinion on who should organize the guild, the majority of votes were cast for the Hero King and the veterans of the association. Somewhere in his office, an association representative was indignant. Mr. Park and Kang Yu-sung, they're behind all of this. They just don't know how dangerous players, especially black ones, can be to civilians. Regulating player autonomy? In some countries, governments are loosening their grip, and guilds are colluding, in collusion with the criminal world. Some countries have even turned into empires of black players because of this. Even in the US, where private player guilds are allowed, they keep their best players under control through military service. Players are just ticking time bombs. When control becomes impossible, it's time to choose the lesser of two evils. Fuckers! They don't have the slightest idea how complex our world is. The representative was presented with signs that read, "Geniuses are often unrecognized by society." Isn't that true? The evil monk became interested in the man and asked if he would like to take part in the tower test. A huge display was playing an advert for a phone, and Kang Yu-sung was there showing off the new device. People were indignant. They're still running this ad? It's from last season. Why hasn't it been taken down yet? Park Tae-shik argued with Kang Yu-sung that he should form a guild and show off a little. First of all, I hate working with stupid people more than anything in the world. And secondly, I just hate idiots, the guy answered. But he didn't have to worry about that. He would just be the face. After all, being first is always hard. After them, there will be more guilds. And competing with each other, they will gradually get rid of each other for the sake of a better future. Something only the Hero King could do. The guy walked past the crowd with a hood on his head so that no reporters would notice him and start asking stupid questions. A Hero King is always the one who goes to the front. The one who is always first. His duty was to raid the towers. The guy looked up. The light fell beautifully on his face. Search for a tower of level 7 or higher. No results. Then the system increased the search radius and plotted a route. The distance was 227 kilometers, almost 300, and the search was over. There was always a way to get into the tower, even if you weren't looking for it. The guy remembered about the elf from the tower. For example, to receive something from her as a gift and just wait for the call, Kang Yu-sung remembered the gift, the necklace. In the same way he received a gift from the boss kid, from the tower to which they went recently. Such gifts represent a means of communication between the world of the tower and the outside world, ours. The player thought he definitely wouldn't be called up, and now he just had to wait a little while. Suddenly, a very loud sound was heard, deafening the people around with cries of, "Tower! Tower! Tower!" This siren-like melody deafened the Hero King, the country's #1 player, the best of the best. A little while later, a new tower appeared, offering to enjoy a raid from the best players on the planet live. A sign appeared in front of Yusan with another inscription. "Forward, child of 1,000 faces and 1,000 talents, entertain us!" The clown monk insisted that Kang Yu-sung, the Hero King, take part in this raid. The tower was elite level. There was practically no information. The purpose of the raid was unknown. To enter the tower, you had to be in the top 10 best players. Of 2 players from the same country, the one with the higher level would pass. No one will die inside the tower. Players should not miss the opportunity to establish useful connections. All incidents in the tower will be broadcast live for people around the world to see. Well, if the raid fails, 100,000 random people will die. This placed a lot of responsibility on the players. The guy couldn't believe it, but despite the shock and horror, he grabbed the sign, agreeing to the raid. A cloak immediately appeared on his shoulders after this, indicating that he was transitioning into the image of a player. He had to wait until all the participants had gathered. People on the street recognized the Hero King. The live broadcast was about to begin. Kang Yu-sung entered the mysterious tower, saying that he was a volunteer. The guy approached a group of other players who were already standing inside the tower. They all looked very different. One of the players called out to the Hero King skeptically, and St. Mary stood nearby and smiled warmly at the guy. Another player extended his hand forward. "Mr. Kang Yu-sung, I'm very glad to see you again." The guy casually pushed aside the stranger's hand and looked forward skeptically, sarcastically reciprocating. But seeing everyone around him, he still put a smile on his face and continued, "It's good to see you all again." While Yusan was talking to the man who extended his hand, St. Mary ran up to them, calling out to the player again. "Is this some kind of weird cosplay? Oh my." The guy turned his gaze to the girl who was now standing next to him. "I'm glad you're normal now." Yusan was surprised by this phrase. Was I ever abnormal? Even during the raid on the 7th level tower, I was worried when I saw this, the girl recalled. The girl looked down, thinking a little about what she was saying. You looked so exhausted. She continued talking about a recent interview when the guy interrupted. I'm fine, and I won't stop raiding. Someone from behind, apparently overhearing their conversation, said skeptically, "Pfft, if you're tired, just give it up." It was another player, with short black hair and shiny armor. Humanity's best player came in last, so he needed time to think about whether to save innocent people. Real heroes don't hesitate in the face of danger, so I was the first one to arrive. Did you even have time to read the terms and conditions? Accepting the offer as soon as you see it is a recipe for disaster. That's why you can't get around me and the gravedigger. Do you know how well that old man calculates everything? The guy turned to the old man next to him and said indignantly, Why don't you have any equipment with you? Oh, you finally noticed me. Well, I haven't started the season yet anyway. The player spread his arms and smiled. No one will die inside the tower, remember. People all over the world are watching the tower's broadcast right now. Until players leave the tower, they will be temporarily given a batch of items from Season 5. All skills and equipment were immediately added to each player's inventory. It seems to even reduce the chances of one of us dying, the old player commented. Gravedigger Georg is the CEO of Artifact. He activated his ability. St. Mary did the same. She used her power and her sword and shield glowed with beautiful magic. I can't even believe they're arguing now. They found the time. Someone put a hand on Maria's shoulder. Ms. Lydia, an international player and law enforcement officer, sighed, rolling her eyes. St. Mary rolled her eyes. And don't act like you've forgotten how many lives are at stake. General Kilgore, the commander-in-chief of U.S. Special Operations, nodded. We have a duty to fulfill our duty to our homeland. The gravedigger addressed Yusan and the second player. Please watch your behavior while you're here. The live broadcast should have started already. What a shame, Mr. Red. Kang Yusung smiled skeptically. The players were standing on the wet floor when someone very large stepped next to them. Oh, did I keep you waiting? This is a celebration in your honor, as a sign of gratitude, our dear rescuers. A giant with a mask on his face walked past. The players looked up intently. Welcome to all heroes of the earth. The light fell on their faces. Yusan replied, Your fellow monk is dead and you're throwing a party? You must not have been on the best of terms. Is it in your best interest not to provoke the monks, Hero King? Or would it be more accurate to call you a monk killer? The title Monk Slayer was awarded to player Kang Yusung, the king hero, for eliminating the season boss, Plague Lord. Mr. Red stood nearby and watched as Kang Yusung communicated with the masked monk. The title for eliminating the boss of the season. I didn't even know that asshole got it, flashed through his mind. The monk continued. I'm telling you, this is a celebration in your honor, as a token of gratitude. I hope you enjoy it. Mr. Red pounced on the monk with a sword, the one who was thirsting for the defeat of the mythological rank, Lone Sword of Nines. This is the sword of a swordsman who spent his entire life searching for someone strong enough to defeat him and ultimately died alone. Each individual attack dealt 9 hits thanks to a passive skill. Yusan looked at the spectacle skeptically. As expected from Red, he likes to play to the crowd. How rude! All attacks are nullified, so don't waste your energy, the monk said, holding out his hand to keep the rain from flying into his eyes. Now I will explain to you the rules of this tower. The guy in the mask took the microphone in his hands, his mask smiling. Dear viewers, it's up to you to choose the hero of this tower. Vote for your favorite player right now. Voting signs appeared in front of people all over the world, and they looked at them in surprise. But then Kang Yusung protested, Hey, wait a minute, wait! You could have rigged the voting results very easily. The masked man covered the player's mouth. Hero King, be careful with your words. We are also just following the rules. Your mission is simple. Attract as much attention as possible, entertain the audience, and nothing more. It doesn't matter how exactly. The reward will go to the one who gets the most votes, the monk finished explaining. And if there aren't enough votes, or if our viewers suddenly get tired of you, this raid will fail. And that already meant that 100 million people would die because of it. So what are you waiting for? Use your head, your tongue, or your body, I don't care. The masked man looked at the crowd in front of him. Let's make some content for the sake of saving the world. I, the sword master, challenge Kang Yu-sung to a duel. The monk praised Red. He was quick on the uptake. But Yu-sun asked again, what if he didn't want that? But he had no option to refuse. If he died during the fight, the guy would respawn. And lastly, you cannot leave the tower until the end of the voting. I will arrange an arena for you. An arena appeared above the players. They found themselves under a huge dome. There were stands and a ceiling. Yu-sun asked to be allowed to ask a question, addressing the player by name, who countered by saying that he was a sword master. Will you fight again after your loss? You'll get the minimum votes now. Red replied, if I don't win, those votes mean absolutely nothing. This is for my loss on the first day of the season, he shouted, his eyes flashing a bright scarlet light. The guy used his opportunity, which allowed him to deliver 9 blows after the main. Kang Yu-sung calmly continued to stand in place. The air was cut by threads from Sharon's web ability. The guy exhaled, smiling brightly at his opponent. Everything around him glowed with his ice magic. You know, taking candy from a child isn't all that fun, although it's terribly easy. He rushed into battle. Red watched the effort with which Kang Yu-sung ran to fight, and was surprised that the player had a sword of 9s in his hands. The other players were also surprised by this. The gravedigger even exclaimed in surprise at this fact. He uses not only the same sword, but also the same technique as the sword master himself, the girl noted. The general recognized in this image of the battle vision the skill of reproduction, and nodded with appreciation. The sword master continued to fight, and in his head there was a mess. My equipment and my own technique. Is the mirror monk really helping the hero king? No, that can't be true. How can this be? Their swords touched, and the only thing that distinguished them was the color of the blows and blades. One blue and the other red. I've dedicated my entire life to this one sword. How can it win? The boy continued to think. The gravedigger placed his hand on his heart in a sign of his respect. Isn't this a miracle, invincible hero of all heroes? None of us can handle him. This phrase angered some of the team players. It's ironic to hear you say that, Gravedigger, when you're the one trying so hard to displace him. The Gravedigger refused the girl. He asked her to look deeper than that and smiled softly. The man waved his hand at the players standing nearby and nodded. Who seriously thinks they have a chance here? How can they behave like this, knowing the situation we all find ourselves in? The girl asked rhetorically. St. Mary looked down sadly. She was worried about the people. The responsibility lay like a burden on her heart. Hundreds of millions of lives depended on clearing this tower, and the girl felt uneasy at the thought. But why is it that all these people think about is killing a top player and taking his place? Memories flashed through my mind. Even if the world ends tomorrow, they will continue to hunt each other. The girl, St. Mary, she realized that Yu-san was right in what he said in the interview. In the first and second seasons, players cleared towers to save the world. They fought to the death, fought until the very end, defeating monsters and demons. But now everything has changed dramatically, and this is what depressed the girl the most. Her blue eyes were filled with sadness. She saw in the players that there were terrible figures standing next to her. It seemed to her that there were demons and hyenas standing next to her. Players became more and more powerful with each new season. They collected more and more artifacts and equipment. Living inside these towers. And was all this really about saving the world? It's just a silly fairy tale. I should have realized that earlier, because Maria is no longer that naive girl. Our worldviews, religions, even skin color are different from each other. We are all different. If we are unable to unite in a game where the salvation of the world is at stake, will we be able to save him at all? These thoughts upset St. Mary. She looked at her hands. It was all very strange, of course. This game is not fair, and up to this point, the Swordmaster accepted it. No matter how strong the Hero King was, he had to have some secret. And if the Swordmaster, Mr. Red, if he can unravel this secret, he'll be able to beat him. The guys fought each other briskly and confidently. It was something else. The Swordmaster continued to reflect. At that moment, I didn't mind losing to him. All I wanted was to unravel the secret of his power. The guy continued to use his passive ability. But Kang Yu-song also did the same, using the capabilities of the Nine Sword, striking his opponent again and again. When they touched swords with each other, Yu-song threw out his barbs. It seems you have forgotten your place. Kang Yu-song, the Hero King, kicked the player in front of him with his leg, lifting it high to hit the other player's chin. Right now, I'll show you the difference between us. The guy swung his sword upward, and immediately after that, he struck the floor with the same sword, breaking the stone into small pieces from which magic was coming out. The swordmaster was kneeling with his sword by his side when a huge sandstorm rose up in front of him, and thanks to this distraction, the guy was able to exchange cards on his sidebar. Suddenly, in the most unexpected way, the hair on Kang Yu-sung's head lengthened, and now, instead of short hair, he had long strands. Thus, Yu-song's mythical level skill was activated. He was dressed in a new suit, and his sword glowed red. Descent of the Heavenly Demon, mythical level. Whoever uses this skill can temporarily manifest the divinity and combat skills of the Heavenly Demon. The 3 Heavenly Demon swords, Form 1, were activated, and Kang Yu-sung charged into battle against the Swordmaster again. He circled his swords around the player, leaving a red trail, and began to split. The 3 Heavenly Demon swords, the second form, also began to activate, the Hero King's eyes glowing red. He used his opportunity, and something very large exploded around him. Red magic poured out in all directions. It was the stage of destruction. The whole performance shocked the other players who were watching from the balcony. A masked monk appeared. The match is over. It was simply an incredible spectacle. As expected of the Hero King, the voting began. The numbers of votes flew at a furious speed. The signs of each player appeared here and there. Kang Yu-song looked skeptically at what was happening. At the signs, at the people, at his defeated opponent. The Hero King raised his sword and copied the gravedigger's skill, summoning a huge skeleton behind him that glowed purple. The players on the balcony, the lady and the saint, were incredibly surprised by this picture. Horror was frozen on their faces. Wow! Is this player that strong? He managed to copy the gravedigger's skills and equipment. People around the world were equally surprised. He's a monster! Is he really human? Another man responded, "We're only alive thanks to this monster." But what should he have called him then? It's simply obvious, my friend. He should have been called nothing other than the Hero King. The player stood in front of the balcony looking at his teammates. "What's wrong with your faces, friends? Is this the first time you've seen a copy skill?" he asked the other players. "I don't think the descent of the Heavenly Demon can be explained by simple skill copying," the gravedigger replied. "That's right. This ability is different from ordinary copying. I fought with a person with this ability. It was a personality collector. This is a large black player who copied all the enemy's habits," the lady continued. "The fighting style is similar, but this ability has clear limitations." Yu-song replied, "It's obvious, since my ability isn't exactly copying. Are you that curious about my skills? Your faces are worth seeing." The guy looked up at his partners. He continued speaking as skeletons walked around them with swords in their hands. "I'll tell you something else. Actually," the guy began his next monologue, placing his palm on his lips. Kang Yu-sung confessed that he had made a contract with the Lord of Truth, and the eyes of a huge skeleton gleamed behind him. The lady was surprised by this information. Did Kang Yu-sung really make a contract with the Lord of Truth? "According to the terms of the contract, I can only speak the truth. Even if the whole world is watching me, I will not lie." The gravedigger cleared his throat. "It seems that your next opponent will be me, honest Kang Yu-sung." But the guy refused. "No, I hate fighting more than anything in the world." He crossed his arms. He continued to say, "As much as I hate impudent scum who don't know their place." Then the gravedigger asked what the player planned to do next. He looked down at him. "From now on, I will try to convey the truth to the audience." The guy turned to the masked presenter. "Oh, well, of course, advertising yourself is the best tactic for getting votes," he agreed. Player Kang Yu-sung picked up the microphone. 1, 2, is the microphone working? I welcome all the spectators. It's not like you have a choice. I'm on every channel, right? That's quite a treat for sure. Anyway, 10 damn heroes gathered in a damn tower." The guy continued his monologue. "And now you have to choose one of them. If you don't get enough votes, 100 million people will get a ticket to the afterlife. Now you understand how important this vote is, don't you? Even the worst tyrant can become president thanks to the vote. If anything goes wrong, this scenario will be the most likely one. The gravedigger ordered Yusan to watch his language. What's the matter? Did my words about the tyrant make you feel somehow uncomfortable? Or am I wrong? People certainly revered national heroes back when I fought you. Ah, I see. Was your dream of recreating the Third Empire a secret? The gravedigger became angry at this. He asked how he dared to say something without any evidence. Yusan reminded him of the contract with the Lord of Truth. The guy twisted his fingers into a zero sign and held it up to his eye. I can't lie at all. Everything I say now is the absolute truth, and nothing but the truth. I hope you'll vote responsibly. It looks like it's time for me to go. Skulls flew around the player. Look, there are more than one or two crazy people here, aren't there, Count Vladimir? The player turned to another. The Count, a player standing a little further away, smiled naively. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yusan continued his interrogation. That's strange. Weren't you the one talking about how you wanted to revive the empire? After all, it was you who said that you would kill the president and become king. The guy dodged the attack. Is something wrong? Demonstrate your magic in order. I hope you're using your own blood. The Count retorted, I will not tolerate insults to my native country and my president, the Hero King. Yes, you are so pious despite your fiery nature. Yusan smiled. Isn't it amazing, General Kilgore? You like to play with fire too. I'm talking about your habit of dropping bombs on enemy countries. You still do that. This monologue already angered the general. He shouted, Player Khan, do you realize the consequences of your words? Yusan nodded and twirled his finger. Of course. How else, frankly speaking, the heroes who saved the world? The heroes who saved the world are just a crazy nationalist, an imperialist, and a war fanatic. I don't think people will like this news. The general pounced on the player with his fists. He threatened Kang Yu-sung, stepped on the table in front of his face, and swung at the guy again. The soldier shouted, I'll show you a jet fighter! The girls screamed back about how this crazy old man wanted to kill them all, and they covered themselves with shields. The man used his exclusive skill, which opened portals with fighters. And when these fighters collided with each other, there was a huge, loud, blinding explosion. How did he copy an exclusive skill? The general couldn't believe what he saw, only that. But in reality, this skill wasn't that exclusive. Yusan kicked the man. The gravedigger asked the question that interested him. Hero King, do you think you can get out of this unscathed? Oh, so you consider them your comrades. Yusan looked at his opponents, spreading his arms out to the sides. Why then do your comrades try to stab you in the back at every opportunity? I already said my contractor is the Lord of Truth, so how can I lie? His eyes sparkled. You do whatever you want. Nothing stopped Yusan from stopping his monologue, he continued. But as soon as the truth came out, you immediately made excuses? He asked an awkward question. The provocation skills rapidly increased, and the clown ruler was pleased with Kang Yu-sung's actions. I can carry the truth to the masses for a long time, but these words will not change the world. These were the thoughts that were in the guy's head. The gravedigger asked, So you plan to burn this world like a wronged child? That's right, I'm just a kid, so I'm bored with you old people. The player smiled sweetly. A child with 1,000 faces and 1,000 talents, the patron of Kang Yu-sung called the player by this very name. He asked what the player wanted, and he replied that he wanted the descent of a heavenly demon. The players standing next to Kang Yu-sung were now wondering what trick he would pull next. And the player's wish was fulfilled. He got what he wanted. The guy stood on stage in front of the audience. The host spoke up. Looks like you've succeeded. Shall we move on to the next hero? We have to give everyone a chance. Maria was the next to volunteer. Since I also have something to say to people, can I be next? The host changed the situation, and now the players were sitting in front of the saint, who in turn was on the sofa. The chairs the players were sitting on were all signed, which really angered the guys. Saint Mary interrupted the players' objections. Kang Yu-sung, Lord, please close your mouth and sit down. The guy agreed, calling the girl darling, she hissed, but still without saying anything began her speech into the microphone. I want to show this world the true qualities of a hero king. She pointed a finger at her friend. The players froze in surprise. What? The saint is supporting the hero king? How the hell did he do that? This beginning of the girl's monologue scared Kang Yu-sung. He screamed her name, being in shock.